Chapter 376. The next time a car passes by, I'll stop it for you. Suzaku placed her backpack by her feet. She took off her shirt and tied it around her waist. She was wearing a black tank top underneath. Her hair was tied up high, revealing her beautiful neck and slender arms. The afternoon sun shone on her body, giving her a bright glow. She was like a hibiscus, slender and elegant, pure and proud. Even in the midst of a noisy crowd, she was able to remain calm and indifferent, making her memorable. A car drove over from afar. Suzaku pulled the collar of her tank top lower, revealing her cleavage. She ran to the road and raised her right hand with a gentle smile on her lips. "Sir, please stop the car." Screech. The car's tires screeched against the asphalt road. A middle-aged man rolled down the car window and stared greedily at Suzaku's chest. Suzaku smiled faintly. "Sir, please give me a ride." The man revealed a perverted smile. "No problem. Get in." "Wait for me." Suzaku ran to the side of the road and picked up her backpack. She grabbed Mika Kito's arm and dragged him. "Let's go." When the driver saw Suzaku and Mika Kito walking over, his wishful thinking fell through. He immediately changed his expression and stepped on the accelerator without waiting for them to open the door. The exhaust from the car sprayed their faces. F***CK. Suzaku was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She threw her bag on the ground and gave the driver the middle finger in the direction of the car. On the other hand, Baitangshin had a calm expression on his face. His shoulders couldn't help but slightly tremble, and a deep smile appeared in his eyes. Suzaku glared at him and said fiercely, "Don't hold it in. Laugh if you want to." "I'm so angry." Mika Kito did not disappoint her at all. He laughed loudly, and his joyful laughter echoed on the empty road. He looked very good when he laughed. His sexy lips were slightly curved, and his eyes were full of smiles. His cold and handsome face softened, and he looked more elegant. His laughter was deep and mellow, like wine that had been in the cellar for many years, exuding a charming fragrance. Listening to his laughter, Vermilion Bird's irritable heart actually slowly calmed down. She fixed her gaze on him, her beautiful eyes slightly narrowed. She discovered that this man's influence on her was getting bigger and bigger. This was not good at all. She shook her head hard and turned around abruptly. With her back facing him, she forced herself to get away from those wild thoughts. Baitangshin retracted his smile and looked at her graceful back. There was still warmth in his eyes that had not dissipated. Vermilion Bird felt a weight on her head, and a man's sun hat fell on her head, blocking the dazzling sunlight. Shifting her line of sight, she saw that Baitangshin was already standing beside her. His thin lips were slightly pursed, and his eyes were calmly looking straight ahead. His perfect side profile appeared even more charming under the sunlight. "Thank you." Her voice was very soft. "You're welcome." His voice was cold. In the end, they still couldn't flag down a car. Perhaps it was because they were in the wilderness and people were very cautious. They wouldn't take the risk of picking up two strangers. Fortunately, there was always a way out. A white van drove over. Mika Kito stood in the middle of the road with his arms open. He stared coldly at the driver in the van, and he exuded an imposing aura. He didn't look like a hitchhiker, but more like a robbery. The driver stepped on the brakes in a panic. The middle-aged woman sitting in the passenger seat poked her head out of the window and shouted at Mika Kito, "What are you doing? Do you want to die?" "I'm sorry, madam." Suzaku hurried forward and explained with a smile, "Madam, we want to go to the county, but we haven't seen a car. I'm not feeling well, so my husband got anxious. I'm sorry for scaring you." The middle-aged woman looked back and forth between Suzaku and Mika Kito suspiciously. She seemed to be considering whether they were telling the truth. Suzaku hurriedly tugged at Mika Kito's arm and said softly, "Honey, apologize to madam." Mika Kito's expression softened, and his tone was gentle. "I'm sorry. My wife is pregnant, so I'm worried about her and the baby." The middle-aged woman didn't say anything, but the driver next to her interrupted. "Honey, if that's the case, let them get in the van." The woman thought for a moment and said, "Okay, but we don't have any seats in the front of the van." If you don't mind, you can go to the back of the van. I don't mind, I don't mind. Thank you, brother and sister-in-law. Suzaku smiled and thanked them. She gently tugged at Mika Kito's arm. Mika Kito smiled. Thank you. The driver jumped out of the van and opened the door of the back of the van. An unpleasant smell assailed their nostrils. The driver smiled good-naturedly. There are dozens of chickens in here. The smell is a little strong. The woman also got out of the van with a few magazines in her hand. She handed them to Suzaku. Use this as a cushion in the van. You can sit for a while. Pregnant women can't stand for too long. Okay, thank you. Suzaku smiled and took the magazines. She calmly climbed into the van as if she didn't smell anything. It was very dark in the van, and the cooing of chickens could be heard in the darkness. She fumbled for a few steps and stopped near the wall of the van. She took out a small flashlight from her suitcase and turned it on to illuminate the van for Mika Kito. Mika Kito stood on the ground, frowning slightly. He seemed to be unable to bear the pungent smell inside. Suzaku smiled and said softly, "Honey, come on up. It's very spacious inside." Mika Kito swore that if it wasn't for this woman, he would never have forced himself to climb into that smelly van. 10 minutes later, the van started moving. The two of them were already sitting on the magazine cushion. They pinched their noses and endured the unpleasant smell. Mika Kito was still thinking about this serious problem. Why did he listen to Suzaku and climb into the van? Was it because they couldn't stop other cars? Obviously not. At most, they could forcefully stop other cars and force the driver to take them. But he frowned and was still thinking. Suddenly, he felt a weight on his shoulder. Suzaku's head was resting on his shoulder. Her soft body was pressed against his, and he could hear her steady breathing. He shrugged his shoulders. Her chin moved, but she didn't pull back. Mika Kito's mouth twitched. She actually fell asleep in such a harsh environment. After an unknown amount of time, the vermilion bird slowly opened her eyes. It was pitch black, and an arm was wrapped around her waist. A broad palm was tightly pressed against her waist to maintain her balance, and her head was leaning on someone's broad shoulder. She was suddenly startled, and quickly retracted her head and straightened her body. "Sorry, I fell asleep." Mika Kito slowly withdrew his hand from her waist and said indifferently, "You can really sleep. You can even fall asleep in such a place." She coughed, and there was a hint of embarrassment in her tone. "I can even fall asleep in worse conditions. I'm sorry." In the darkness, Bei Tangshan couldn't see the other party's appearance and expression clearly. He had to rely on words to analyze the other party's emotions, so he could hear her embarrassment at this time. He couldn't help but imagine what kind of situation it would be if her ice-cold face revealed an awkward expression. He smiled. "You don't seem to have mentioned the past." She said indifferently, "There's nothing to talk about. I just went through training and was groomed to be an assassin. It's very simple." She said it lightly, but Mika Kito knew what it meant. She had to train day and night, sweat mixed with blood, physical and mental torture. The ruthless assassin training was like purgatory on earth. He was silent for a moment and said slowly, "Have you ever thought about not being an assassin anymore?" She sneered. "What else can I do other than being an assassin? From the moment I killed the first person, there was no turning back. I can set you free." When he said those words, even Bei Tangshan himself was shocked. Suzaku was stunned. But he should be cold and ruthless. He should be scheming and shrewd. He wouldn't do anything that would harm his interests. She was still useful to him. He shouldn't give up on her so easily. Mika Kito frowned and said angrily, "There's no reason. Are you not willing to set you free?" She was silent for a moment and laughed softly. "Thank you. But you can't threaten me with Director Lin anymore." He frowned even more. "You're both free. Thank you." Her tone was relaxed and happy, which made him a little frustrated. She suddenly said, "Words are no guarantee. We'll sign the agreement when we get home." "I'm going back on my word. You've already lost your freedom." Mika Kito's voice was cold and didn't sound like he was joking. Suzaku laughed self-deprecatingly. "Forget it. I don't have any expectations anyway." She knew that he wouldn't be so kind all of a sudden. The van stopped. Soon, the door of the van opened and faint light shone in. The driver's voice was heard. "We've arrived at the county. Get out." The two of them stood by the roadside and watched the van drive away. Mika Kito patted his clothes in disgust as if there were many invisible germs on them. Suzaku looked at the sun in the sky and said, "What are we going to do now?" "Let's find a hotel first and inform Lu Xing to pick us up." Mika Kito was a clean freak and couldn't stand the stench of chicken dung on his body. "We don't have any money left." Suzaku felt that it was necessary to remind him. He glanced at her indifferently. "I have a watch too." And his watch was worth a lot of money. The two of them found a clean and tidy hotel and pawned their watches to the hotel owner. Then they called Lu Xing, who was staying in Hokkaido, to pick them up. 2 hours later, Lu Xing arrived in a high-class car. Bei Tang Shin and Vermilion Bird had already changed their clothes and were enjoying the delicious dinner personally prepared by the proprietress of the hotel. It was getting late and Mika Kito decided to stay for the night. The next morning, Suzaku felt that something was wrong with his body. Come and see. Hongcha 866. Chapter 377. When she brushed her teeth, she felt nauseous. Perhaps she had drunk too much and her stomach was upset. That was her guess. However, at the same time, she was calculating in her heart that this month's period would be in the next 2 days. If her period came, then everything would be fine. If it didn't come, she would need to buy a pregnancy test paper. Vermilion Bird sat in the back seat of the car, her whole body leaning against the soft back of the seat, her slender fingers rubbing her temples. She didn't look too good. Her face was pale and bloodless. Mika Kito was sitting beside her. He turned to look at her and said calmly, "Are you not feeling well?" She closed her eyes and replied, "Yeah. My head hurts a little." She suddenly felt a hand on her forehead. It was cool and comfortable. He said unhurriedly, "Your body temperature is normal. Perhaps you didn't sleep well last night. There's still a long way to go. Take a nap first." He retracted his hand and the cool touch disappeared. She actually felt a little disappointed and despised herself for acting like this. She turned her body and curled up in a corner. An arm wrapped around her waist and pulled her to his side. He pressed her head forcefully against his shoulder and said firmly, "Lean against me." With his other hand, he took a blanket and covered her body. She felt a sour and bitter taste in her heart. Her long eyelashes fluttered a few times as if she wanted to open her eyes. In the end, she closed them tightly. She wanted to ask why he was so good to her. She also wanted to say that if he couldn't give her love, then he shouldn't be so good to her and let her fantasize about him. Mika Kito hugged her and looked down at her sleeping face. His gaze was deep. When Lu Xing saw this scene through the rearview mirror, a smile appeared in her eyes. In her heart, she was full of admiration for Bei Tang Yuan. It seemed that this move of the second young master really had a positive effect. The relationship between the eldest young master and the Vermilion Bird had advanced by leaps and bounds. Perhaps it was because his broad shoulders made her feel at ease. Perhaps it was because she was too tired, but Suzaku fell asleep very quickly. When she woke up, she realized that she was already leaning on his chest. Beside her ears, she could hear his heart beating powerfully. At the tip of her nose, she could smell the unique fragrance of his body. When she moved slightly, Mika Kito opened her eyes. She tightened her grip on her waist and whispered, "You're awake? Does your head still hurt?" Suzaku got up from his arms and smoothed her messy hair. "I'm much better now. Thank you." The Hokkaido trio finally met up at the Sapporo airport. Hiroshi Kitado was wearing a white t-shirt, jeans, and a sun hat. His handsome face was full of smiles, and he looked like an adorable puppy, wagging the non-existent tail behind him vigorously. "Brother, woo, you're finally back safely." Mika Kito snorted with a straight face. "Thanks to you, we're not lost in the valley yet. Brother, don't be so petty. I'm doing this for your own good." Ayuen happily followed behind them. She tugged at Suzaku's arm and asked with a smile, "Woo, you won't blame me, right?" Suzaku stopped in her tracks. She raised her hand and knocked on his forehead. She said snappily, I was almost angered to death by you. But seeing that you were kind, I'll forgive you. Ayuan acted cute with tears in her eyes. You're really magnanimous. I'm so grateful. Mika Kito shook her head in amusement. After the Hokkaido trip, they returned to Tokyo. Ayuan keenly noticed that the relationship between her brother and Suzuka had improved a lot. Although they still didn't interact much on the surface, they were no longer at daggers drawn and cold. It seemed that what he did was very effective. Ayuan had the motivation to continue. Oh yeah. Suzuka realized that things seemed to have gotten out of hand. Her period was already more than half a month old, but there were still no signs of it coming. She hid it from everyone and went to the supermarket to buy a pregnancy test kit. After the test, she sat in a daze on the toilet for more than half an hour. Damn it, she was pregnant. She had clearly taken the morning after pill. She held her forehead with one hand. Her head hurt and her heart was in a mess. The servant knocked on her door and invited her downstairs for dinner. Suzaku took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. She threw the pregnancy test kit into the trash can, washed her hands, sorted out her emotions, and slowly went downstairs. She had something on her mind, so her appetite wasn't good. Her chopsticks picked up the food intermittently, and she didn't even know what she had stuffed into her mouth. She bit down lightly, and her mouth was filled with the taste of fish. She felt disgusted and her stomach churned uncontrollably. She threw down her chopsticks, covered her mouth, and hurriedly ran downstairs to the bathroom. What's wrong? Ayuan hurriedly put down her chopsticks and stood up. Just as she was about to chase after her, she remembered something and stopped in her tracks. She turned to look at Mika Kito. Brother, you doesn't seem to be feeling well. Do you want to go and see her? Bei Tangshin's deep and serene gaze retracted from Vermilion Bird's back and leisurely landed on her bowl. It was a half-eaten piece of fried fish. Suzuka lay on the toilet and vomited until she was dizzy. Her eyes were filled with tears from vomiting. Mika Kito crossed his arms and leaned against the bathroom door. He watched as her thin shoulders trembled from vomiting. After a moment of silence, he finally walked up to her and patted her back. After a while she stopped vomiting and gasped heavily for breath. He asked in a deep voice, "Are you feeling better?" She nodded. She didn't dare to raise her head and let him see her sorry state. "Go out first. I need to tidy up." He left and closed the bathroom door behind him. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was pale, her hair was messy, and her eyes were filled with panic. She didn't look like herself at all. She sighed, rinsed her mouth, and patted her face with cold water. She raised her wet head and looked at herself in the mirror. She decided to hide it from everyone and solve this problem. The corridor of the obstetrics and gynecology department of the hospital was filled with pregnant women. Some of them were like Suzuka. There were no visible signs of pregnancy on their abdomens, but they looked very nervous. They must have come to the hospital for a checkup to confirm if they were pregnant. Suzaku still had a glimmer of hope. She thought that there was a problem with the pregnancy test kit she bought and that the test results were wrong. However, after the doctor's examination, he gave her a death sentence. "Miss Lin, congratulations. You're 6 weeks pregnant." Suzaku's body stiffened. Her fingers clenched into fists, and her nails dug into her palms. After a long time, she said, "Doctor, I don't want this child." The doctor was slightly stunned and frowned. "Miss Lin, abortion is illegal in our country." Suzaku smiled. "I know, but this law is obviously not binding. The abortion rate in Japan is still very high. I don't have the ability to give the child a complete family. I can't give birth to her. Doctor, please help me." The doctor sighed. "Have you thought about it?" Vermilion Bird nodded. "Yes, I've already thought about it." On the other side, Mika Kito was having a meeting with his subordinates. Jiang Dao quietly pushed the door open and walked to his side. He leaned in and whispered in his ear, "Boss, the maid in the villa called. She said that she has something important to report to you." Mika Kito asked him to transfer the call to the meeting room. The maid's voice was agitated as she said intermittently, "Young master, I was cleaning Miss Suzaku's room just now and found a pregnancy test kit. She's pregnant." Mika Kito's fingers suddenly tightened around the phone. A storm suddenly gathered in his eyes. The scene from last night flashed across his mind. Suzaku was sensitive to the fishy smell and vomited for a long time. At that time, he had only suspected it, so he had asked the maid to pay more attention to Suzaku. He did not expect that she was really pregnant. He hung up the phone with a bang. His face was terrifyingly gloomy. Everyone in the meeting room lowered their heads, not daring to look into his cold eyes. Mika Kito clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, "Where is Suzaku? Ask her to come to my office." Jiang Dao lowered his head. Suzaku asked for leave today. She seems to be feeling unwell and needs to go to the hospital. As soon as he finished speaking, Mika Kito strode out and said in a deep voice, "The meeting is over. Jiang Dao, prepare the car." "Yes, sir." Mika Kito was expressionless. He exuded a powerful aura as he strode out. Everywhere he passed, all the employees bowed and did not dare to breathe loudly. Jiang Dao followed closely behind and ordered the driver to drive the car to the entrance of the company. After getting into the car, Mika Kito called Suzaku's phone. It was turned off. The nearest hospital to the company was the first hospital. Suzaku might have gone there. He ordered the driver to drive to the first hospital. His fingers gripped his phone tightly. His heart was filled with complicated emotions. She was pregnant. He could not help but recall the conversation they had about the child. She was such a proud and resolute person. She would definitely not go back on her words. She would definitely abort the child. Aborting the child was the result he wanted. But why did he not feel happy at all? There was only an indescribable sense of panic. He was not ready to be a father, but he was not cruel enough to kill his own child. Once he understood his feelings, Mika Kito's eyes shone with determination. He said in a deep voice, "Hurry up." Vermilion Bird was lying on the operating bed, quietly looking at the ceiling. In his heart, he silently said, "I'm sorry." These apologies were for the child who was too late to be born. She was not a responsible mother. The nurse slowly injected the anesthetic into her body. She started to lose consciousness. Her eyelids felt heavy and she wanted to sleep. She felt someone pulling her legs apart. A gentle female voice comforted her and told her not to be afraid. She wanted to say that she was not afraid. She just felt sorry. The moment she closed her eyes, the door of the operating room was slammed open with a loud bang. Suzaku's last consciousness stopped at Mika Kito's stern voice. "Stop." Add Songshu 566. Chapter 378. 2 hours later, when Suzaku regained consciousness, she was already lying on her bed. A tall figure was standing by the large window. The faint sunlight shone on him through the curtains, making it seem like a dream. Suzaku rubbed her temples and got up from the bed. Mika Kito heard the noise and turned around. His gaze fell on her, and it was so deep that it made her shudder. He slowly approached her, and his entire body exuded a domineering and cold aura that made her feel suffocated. Suzaku met his gaze calmly and said indifferently, "I took the morning after pill, but I didn't expect it to be ineffective. I'm sorry to have caused you trouble." Her tone was calm and distant. She didn't treat him as the child's father at all. It was as if they were strangers living under the same roof. Mika Kito felt an inexplicable anger rise in his heart. He stared at her with a gloomy face. "Why did you hide it from me?" She ran her fingers through her hair and said calmly, "I thought I could solve it. If you hadn't appeared, this problem would have been solved." "Damn woman, why didn't you ask for my opinion? I'm the child's father." On the way to the hospital, Mika Kito had already accepted this fact. He even started to think about how to fulfill his responsibilities as a father. Suzaku's lips curled into a mocking smile. She stared at his face calmly. "Have you forgotten that you once expressed your wish not to have children? I thought your opinion was already very clear." His expression froze. "I've changed my mind now. Even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs. I'm not so cruel as to kill my own child." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly reached out, grabbed her arm, and dragged her down from the bed. He suppressed his anger in a low voice. "Come with me." "Where to?" She instinctively struggled. He pulled her into his arms, and his arm wrapped tightly around her slender waist. He threatened in a low voice, "Try moving again." Suzaku bit her lips. Yes, she was not as good as him in terms of physical strength and martial arts, but that did not mean that she would surrender and let him do whatever he wanted to her. She lost her cool and her eyes were filled with anger. She vented the resentment in her heart at him, baiting Shin, "What are you trying to do? I've had enough. Let go of me. I don't need you to meddle in my affairs." "Shut up." Mika Kito held her tightly in her arms, her eyes burning with anger. "Don't move. If you hurt the child, I won't let you off." "You lunatic, what are you trying to do?" "Let go, I told you to let go." Suzaku was forcefully dragged downstairs by his arm. She quickly grabbed the railing of the stairs. Her fair skin was dyed red with anger. She gritted her teeth and said, "If you don't make it clear, I won't go with you." She was like an angry kitten, her fur standing on end as she stared at him warily. The mask of indifference and heartlessness had cracked, leaving only anger. Mika Kito actually found this side of her very interesting. He restrained his cold and stern aura, and his tone was much gentler. "Let's go visit Director Lin now to discuss the marriage." "No, I've said before that I don't agree to the marriage." Suzaku was slightly stunned and immediately hugged the railing even tighter. Mika Kito suppressed the anger in his heart and tried to reason with her. "We already have a child. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for the child. Do you want the child to be called an illegitimate child the moment he's born?" She slowly said, "So, you're marrying me for the child?" He pursed his lips and slowly said, "Yes." She chuckled. "I understand." Her smile was as bright as a spring flower, but it made him feel uneasy. His lips moved a few times and he wanted to say something, but he could not. In the end, he gave up. Bending down, he caught her off guard and lifted her up by her waist. She smiled faintly. "Put me down. I promise I won't run away again." He lowered his head and looked at her. He did not put her down as she wanted. He was still wary of her. He carried her directly and put her in the front passenger seat of the car. After fastening the seatbelt, he sat in the driver's seat. The afternoon sun quietly poured down on the wooden floor of the front yard. A gentle breeze blew, and the wind chimes hanging under the eaves tinkled. Mika Kito and Suzuki knelt on the carpet, and a tea set was placed on the coffee table in front of them. Director Lin was wearing reading glasses, and there was a kind smile on his wrinkled face as he skillfully brewed tea. The aroma of the tea filled the air. Mika Kito took a sniff and slowly took a sip. He gently placed the purple clay teacup on the coffee table. He smiled and said in a deep voice, "Director Lin, I'm here today to talk to you about my marriage with Wu Yu." "Marriage?" Director Lin placed the teapot back on the coffee table. Her gaze landed on Suzaku, and she looked puzzled. "Wu Yu, you're going to marry Mr. Baiting. Is this true?" Suzaku's lips curved upwards, and a faint smile bloomed on her face. "Yes, we've decided to get married." Director Lin couldn't believe her ears. Although she didn't ask anything, she knew that Wu Yu seemed to be working under Mika Kito. She also knew that she and Wu Yu were controlled by Mika Kito. She didn't expect them to develop to this stage. Director Lin was silent for a moment, and looked at Mika Kito seriously. "Mr. Baiting, I've always treated Wu Yu as my biological daughter. I hope that she can be happy. May I ask why you want to marry Wu Yu?" Suzaku's gaze shifted, and she looked at the man beside her. His face was calm, and his lips were slightly pursed. She didn't want to put him in a difficult position. "Because I'm pregnant. I love her." Both of them spoke at the same time. Principal Lin was suddenly shaken as he stared at the two of them in disbelief. The vermilion bird also stared at Beitang Shin in disbelief. However, it only lasted for 2 seconds before she retracted her gaze as a hint of sadness flashed past her eyes. She should know that he was only lying in order to make Principal Lin feel at ease. Director Lin's fingers trembled, and she held the edge of the coffee table tightly. She said slowly, "Wu Yu, are you really pregnant?" Suzaku's gaze was as calm as still water. Director Lin's lips trembled, and she wanted to say something, but in the end, she held herself back. Young people nowadays were no longer like old fogies like her. She sighed, and turned to look at Mika Kito. Mr. Bating, if you really like Wu Yu, then I wish you all the best. Please take good care of Wu Yu. She's a very innocent girl, please don't let her get hurt. Mika Kito placed his hands on his knees and bowed humbly. I won't let you down. I'll take good care of her. Okay. Director Lin's eyes were wet, and she looked at him with a gratified expression, nodding repeatedly. Suzaku was like a puppet, sitting quietly at the side with a tranquil smile, listening to Mika Kito and Director Lin discuss the time and style of the wedding. Mika Kito turned to look at her with a smile. Do you like Chinese, Japanese, or Western? She smiled. I'll listen to you. He thought for a while and said, how about Western? He considered that she didn't understand Japanese culture, and it would be difficult to hold a Japanese wedding. A Chinese wedding would also be very cumbersome, so a Western wedding would be simpler. She smiled. Okay. His gaze was extremely gentle. Make a list of friends you want to invite, and we'll personally write an invitation letter to them. As for the wedding gown, I plan to ask the chief designer in France to help you design it. You can tell me any details you want, and the designer will try his best to fulfill them. In this conversation, she said the word, okay, the most. Mika Kito and Director Lin both sensed that there was something wrong with her. Before they left, Director Lin took her hand and said something intimate. Wu, tell me honestly, were you forced? Suzaku smiled brightly. Director, you're thinking too much. I agreed to marry him willingly. Then why do you seem a little strange? It's as if you don't care much about anything. Suzuka ran her fingers through her hair and lowered her eyes, looking a little shy. As long as I marry him, I don't care about anything. I see. Then I'm relieved. Director Lin was relieved. She patted the back of her hand and smiled from ear to ear. I think Mr. Bating treats you quite well. You two are a good match. I'm happy for you. Previously, Director Lin was still a little worried. But after discussing the wedding with Mika Kito, she could tell that Mika Kito had feelings for Wu Yu. She also believed that he would treat Wu Yu well. On the way home, Suzaku turned her back to Mika Kito and looked out of the car window. I haven't seen Director Lin so happy in a long time. Even if it's just an act, I still have to thank you. Mika Kito glanced at her back. Try to trust me more in the future. I'm not acting. Suzaku wanted to laugh, but she couldn't. He had already told her frankly that he was marrying her for the sake of the child, but he still admitted that he loved her in front of Director Lin. If this wasn't an act, then what was? However, it didn't matter. When the news of their marriage spread to China, Xia Dong and the children were all shocked. Bailey Han, on the other hand, was overjoyed. He felt that his potential love rival had finally been defeated. To him, this was a good thing. The family packed their luggage and arrived in Japan a week in advance. They planned to take the opportunity to travel to Japan. It was their family's first trip. On the day they arrived at the airport, Mika Kito brought Suzaku to welcome them. Congratulations. Bailey Han smiled as he extended his hand and shook Mika Kito's hand. Mika Kito smiled. Thank you. Xia Dong hugged Suzaku and said with a smile, I really didn't expect you two to get together, but you two are really compatible. Suzaku, congratulations. Suzaku also hugged her and smiled. Thank you. Uncle Shin. The three children shouted happily as they pounced on Mika Kito. Suzaku watched as he was surrounded by the children with a bright smile on his face. During this time, he raised his head to look at Xia Dong and whispered something to her. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. She could clearly see that his eyes were still filled with love and adoration. Welfare Hongcha 866. Chapter 379. Vermilion Bird envied the tacit understanding between the two of them. She also envied the feelings between the two of them. However, even though she was envious, she was not jealous of Xia Dong, who had always been hidden in the depths of her heart. She would not hurt him because of this, because to her, Xia Dong was also a very important friend. Before Xia Dong and Bailey Han came to Japan, they had already planned their daily schedule. The time they spent with Mika Kito and the rest was very short. They would leave early and return late every day, taking the children to play around. 2 days before the wedding, Tomac flew over from Italy and brought Holly's blessings. The blue sky was clear, the sun was rising, and the clear lake was sparkling. Next to the lake, there was a boundless lawn. All kinds of heart-shaped balloons were flying in the air, and cheerful music brought out a strong sense of jubilation. This was a grand lawn wedding. The venue was meticulously decorated. Guests in all kinds of gowns walked hand in hand, chatting and laughing with their acquaintances. The wedding would start in half an hour. In the bride's lounge, Suzaku was wearing a white wedding gown. She sat in front of the dressing mirror with mixed feelings. She almost couldn't recognize herself in the mirror. So there would be a day when she would wear a wedding gown and marry the man she loved. But why did she feel more sad than happy? She clenched her fists tightly. Her heart was beating very fast. There was a voice in her heart that kept telling her that he didn't love her. He only married her for the sake of the children and for the sake of responsibility. She couldn't let the mistake continue. She should return him his freedom. 10 minutes later, the door to the lounge was tightly shut. Mika Kito stood at the door. He was wearing a white wedding gown. The contours of his face were like a perfect work of art. His thin and sexy lips were slightly curved. His long and well-defined fingers were slightly bent as he knocked on the door. His voice was magnetic and had a subtle gentleness. "Suzaku, it's almost time. Are you ready?" There was silence. His eyes flashed and he increased his strength. "Suzaku?" There was still no answer. "Break the door," he said to Jiang Dao behind him. The door was slammed open. There was no one in the room. The wedding dress was abandoned on the floor, and the veil was thrown on the windowsill. Mika Kito picked up the veil and held it tightly in her hand. The aura she exuded changed completely. Her natural domineering aura was tinged with fury. Her deep black eyes were like sharp blades, and she wanted to cut the woman into pieces. Jiang Dao informed his subordinates stationed at the wedding venue to track down Suzaku, while Mika Kito canceled the wedding in front of all the guests. The guests were in an uproar. They whispered to each other and made all kinds of guesses. Mika Kito didn't care that he would become the laughingstock of the Japanese mafia. He didn't care about these people's probing or sympathetic gazes. The only thing he cared about was the woman who dared to run away from the marriage. He didn't understand why she had to run away. He had to catch her and ask her the reason. "Brother Shin." Xia Dong walked to Mika Kito's side, not knowing how to comfort him. He said calmly, "I'm fine." He looked calm on the surface, but Xia Dong knew that he was extremely angry. If he caught Suzaku, she would be severely punished. Even she started to worry about Suzaku. But why did Suzaku run away from the marriage? Clearly, the two of them looked very happy. Bei Tang deeply thought that with his own power he could easily find the whereabouts of the vermilion bird. Later on, he found out that he was wrong. The vermilion bird was really a ruthless woman. If she wanted, she could hide in a place where no one would be able to find her for the rest of their lives. It had been 3 years, and Mika Kito still didn't know where she was. He even started to wonder if this woman was still alive. Otherwise, why didn't she contact Director Lin or a Yuen for 3 years? Mika Kito would bring a Yuen to visit Director Lin every week. They seemed to be deliberately avoiding Suzaku and always talked about trivial things. On the day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Director Lin drank 2 glasses of rice wine and was slightly drunk. She held Mika Kito's hand and murmured, "Shen, can you wait for another year?" Mika Kito helped her to the bed to rest. She sighed. "If Wu Yu still doesn't want to come back after a year, don't wait for her anymore." Mika Kito didn't answer. He waved his hand and called the maid to take care of Director Lin. Outside the courtyard, the moonlight was cold, and the air was filled with the fragrance of osmanthus flowers. He stood in the garden and looked at the full moon in the sky. His finger gently rubbed the ring on his left hand. The diamond on the ring shone charmingly under the moonlight. On such a night, he couldn't help but wonder if she had kept their child. If she had given birth to the child should be able to run, jump, and call her mommy by now. In a small town in Hokkaido, the residents here basically relied on fishing and fish farming for a living. Every day, Many boats went out to sea against the rising sun and returned with a full load under the sunset. The people here were simple and honest. The residents on the island all knew each other, and they warmly helped the outsiders. For example, in the largest flower shop on the island, the young lady boss took care of the shop alone with her 2-year-old child. The elderly neighbors often helped her take care of the child when she was busy. The flower shop was located in the busiest part of the street and was very close to a middle school. After school, a few girls liked to buy flowers from the shop and bring them home. In fact, buying flowers wasn't their main purpose. Their main purpose was to tease the lady boss's Xiao Bao. Sister Wu Yu, we're here again. Led by Xiao Xuan, the girls carried their school bags and walked into the flower shop with smiles on their faces. Behind the counter stood a young woman in an apron. Her hair was combed into a bun on top of her head, and her neat bangs covered her smooth forehead. A pair of black-framed glasses rested on the bridge of her nose. She smiled and greeted the girls. Hello, what flowers would you like to buy today? A bright smile appeared on Xiao Xuan's delicate face. Lilies. I'm going to give them to Mommy today. Is that so? What a good girl. Wu Yu smiled and praised Xiao Xuan. Her fingers skillfully wrapped the bouquet. Sister Wu Yu, where's Now Now? Why don't I see Now Now? Chiba, who had already scanned the flower shop and didn't find the target person, came to the counter and asked eagerly. Wu Yu smiled apologetically. Now Now is tired from playing with Chiu Yi during the day. She's sleeping upstairs now. Chiba put her hands together and said pitifully, Sister Wu Yu, I don't feel well after not seeing Now Now for a day. Can you let me go upstairs and take a peek? I swear I won't wake her up. I also want to see. Xiao Xuan and the other girls also came up. We laughed. All right, I really don't know what to do with you. Yeah, thank you, Sister Wu Yu. The girls ran upstairs excitedly. After taking 2 steps, they all lightened their steps and reminded each other not to wake Now Now up. Wu Yu looked at their backs and shook her head with a smile. On the 2nd floor of the flower shop was Wu Yu and Now Nao's bedroom. Xiao Xuan gently opened the door of Now Nao's bedroom. It was a beautiful and cozy children's room. Now Now was curled up in a small bed that was more than 1 meter long. He was sleeping soundly with his eyes closed. His little face was pink and chubby, like a cute big apple, which made people want to take a bite. His eyelashes were long and curly. He was a boy, but he had thick and dense eyelashes, which made the older girls envious. Xiao Xuan couldn't help but reach out and touch his smooth and tender little face. Chiba took out her phone and took a picture of Now Nao's sleeping face. The girls didn't want to wake Now Now up, so they didn't stay for long. Soon, they went downstairs and paid the bill at the counter. They took the flowers and said goodbye to Wu Yu with a smile and skipped home. As Chiba walked, she looked at the pictures of Now Now saved on her phone and sighed. Now Now is so good-looking. I think his father must be very good-looking too. Xiao Xuan knocked on her forehead. Don't say such things in front of Sister Wu Yu. I heard that Sister Wu Yu's husband is dead. Don't remind her of sad things, okay? Aya, don't keep knocking on my forehead. I'm not a fool. Of course, I won't say such things in front of Sister Wu Yu. I'm sorry. I'm used to it and can't change it. Xiao Xuan, you're so annoying. The girls walked forward noisily, scattering their laughter all the way. October 21st was a very special day. 3 years ago, Mika Kito and Suzuka held their wedding on that day. Suzaku ran away from the wedding. Mika Kito thought for a long time and decided not to passively wait for her to appear. There were some things that he wanted to tell her. Mika Kito, who never appeared on television, participated in a talk show with high ratings on October 21st. As soon as the show started, he faced the camera and said slowly, "Honey, it's been 3 years. You should have had enough fun. Come back quickly. I miss you very much." The beautiful host was very excited and quickly asked, "Mr. Baiting, you never talk about your personal feelings in front of the media. Why did you suddenly change your mind today?" Mika Kito had a gentle smile on his face. Today is a very special day. 3 years ago today, my wife and I held our wedding. However, before the wedding, my wife abandoned me and ran away alone. The audience was in an uproar. The host did not expect such a shocking story and asked, "May I ask why your wife ran away from the wedding?" Mika Kito rubbed the ring on his ring finger and smiled. "I've been asking myself this question for a long time. It wasn't until recently that I figured it out. My wife thought that I didn't love her and that I married her out of responsibility. That's why she ran away and wanted to give me back my freedom. She was right. At that time, I did marry her out of responsibility." Beauty novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 380. The host asked curiously, "How do you feel about your wife now? Is there anything you want to say to her?" Mika Kito looked at the camera affectionately, as though he could see Suzaku's eyes through the lens. He said slowly, "Honey, I've sorted out my feelings. Can I love you now?" He was the leader of the underworld, the CEO of the Bo-Ao group, and a legendary figure who never appeared in the media. No one had expected him to confess to his wife in front of the entire country. At this moment, he was no longer domineering or aggressive. All that was left was his deep love for his wife, his desire for love, and his humility. Many people in the audience were moved by his words. The host also couldn't help but take the lead and applaud him. The applause was like a tidal wave, booming like thunder. After the audience quieted down, the host said, "Mr. Bain, if your wife doesn't want to come back, will you continue to wait for her?" This question was the focus of everyone's attention. Mika Kito had already waited for Suzaku for 3 years. Was he still willing to wait for her? Everyone's eyes were on him, waiting for his answer. Mika Kito smiled and said calmly, "I won't wait for her anymore." The audience was in an uproar. Some people whispered to each other, obviously not satisfied with his answer. The host's expression changed, and he smiled awkwardly. "Can you tell me the reason?" Mika Kito ignored everyone's doubts. He looked deeply into the camera and said in a deep voice, "Honey, I don't care where you are in the world, and I don't care if you can hear what I'm saying today. I want to reiterate that I won't wait for you anymore. I'm going to look for you. Even if you're at the end of the world, I'll find you. You'll be my legal wife for 10 years or 20 years, and you'll never run away." The audience was stunned for a moment. Soon, thunderous applause broke out. "It's so touching, Mr. Baiting. You will definitely find your wife." The host stood up and applauded him with red eyes. Mika Kito also stood up. He faced the audience and the camera and said solemnly, "My wife is Wu Yulin. If anyone has any news about her, please contact my assistant at any time. I will reward the person who provides me with the information. I'm counting on everyone." With that, he placed his hands on the sides of his legs and bowed deeply to everyone. The host quickly said, "Regarding the contact information of Mr. Beitong's assistant and Mrs. Beitong's photo, please look at the bottom of the big screen. If you have any news about Mrs. Beitong, you can also contact the program team. I hope that with everyone's efforts, this pair of lovers can finally get married. Thank you for your support." News about Mika Kito was all over the country, and the video of his show was also widely circulated on the internet. Even the girls at school knew that he was looking for his wife who had left home for 3 years. Xiao Xuan held her phone and watched the video. She sighed with tears in her eyes. "Oh my God! I didn't expect the handsome Uncle Beitang to already have a wife. What a pity." "No. I mean, it's so touching," Chiba patted her shoulder. "Xiao Xuan, I think Uncle Beitang mentioned that his wife is Wu Yulin, right?" "Yes. There's a photo of her here." Xiao Xuan pointed at the small photo at the bottom of the video. "She's very pretty, but she looks cold." Chen Ye's delicate brows furrowed. "Little Sun, do you think the person Uncle Beitang is looking for is Sister Worryless?" "Sister Wu?" Xiao Xuan widened her eyes and waved her hand. "That's impossible. Sister Wu Yu has a bright smile on her face every day. She's completely different from the cold beauty in the photo." Chiba scratched her head. "But I think they look a little alike." Xiao Xuan shook her head. "I still think it's impossible." After school, when the girls went to the flower shop to buy flowers, they were still whispering about this matter. From time to time, they would steal glances at Wu Yu, who was busy behind the counter. Xiao Xuan lowered her voice. "Chiba, if you don't give up, you can ask Sister Wu Yu." "Why me?" Chiba glared at her. Idiot. Because you're curious, aren't you? Xiao Xuan pulled her away from her friends and pushed her to the counter. She said loudly, Sister Wu Yu, Chiba has something to ask you. Wu Yu turned around with a bouquet of flowers in her arms. She smiled and said, What do you want to ask me? Chiba was almost angered to death by Xiao Xuan. She frowned in annoyance and hesitated, not knowing what to say. Wu Yu looked at her gently. Chiba, what's the matter? Chiba shook her head frantically. No, nothing. Sister Wu Yu, do you know the CEO of Boa Corporation, Mika Kido? Wu Yu's smile did not change. I don't know him. What's the matter? Chiba heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she felt a little disappointed. Xiao Xuan patted Chiba's shoulder. See, I told you that Sister Wu Yu is the person Uncle Beitang is looking for. Wu Yu asked quizzically, What are you talking about? Why can't I understand? It's like this. The CEO of Boa Corporation, Mika Kido, participated in a talk show. He said on the show that he wanted to find his wife. Xiao Xuan put her hands together and told Wu Yu what Mika Kido said on the show with tears in her eyes. How was it, Sister Wu Yu? Wasn't it very touching? The little girl blinked her beautiful eyes and looked at her eagerly. Wu Yu smiled. Yes, it was very touching. When Chiba found out that Wu Yu was not the person Mika Kido was looking for, she was worried that she would be reminded of her sad past, so she quickly interrupted. Sister Wu Yu, where's Now? He went out to play with Akino. The little rascal is so clingy. Wu Yu's smile was full of affection. Mommy, I'm back. A soft child's voice suddenly came from the door. Ah, Now is back. Xiao Xuan and Chiba shouted happily as they rushed to the door. Soon, they walked into the flower shop, each holding a little girl's hand. The chubby little boy had a bright smile on his face. He raised his little head and looked innocently at Worryless behind the counter with his big, watery eyes. His voice was soft and coquettish as he said, Mommy, I'm not a brat. I'm a good baby. Now, it's useless to act like a spoiled child. You're just a disobedient little rascal. Wu Yu took off her gloves and came out from behind the counter. She rubbed her son's face and asked, Where's Uncle Aquino? Uncle Aquino is outside. The little boy turned around and pointed outside the flower shop. Now, play with your sisters. Mommy will go out for a while. Wu Yu patted her son's head and entrusted her son to Xiao Xuan and Chiba. On the street outside the flower shop, a young policeman was holding a bicycle and chatting with an old lady. This policeman was Akino Asakura. He was the town's patrol officer and was very kind and cheerful. He was very loved by the town's residents. The old lady was Wu Yu's neighbor and often helped her take care of Now. She made delicious food and liked to give it to them. Wu Yu and Now both liked this kind old lady. Wu Yu smiled and greeted them. Auntie Kimura, Officer Aquino. When Aquino saw her, a bright smile appeared on his face. Hello, Miss Wu. Wu Yu, you're here. Mrs. Kimura smiled. You guys have a chat. I still have some soup at home. I'll go back first. Aquino, don't forget what I told you. Aquino smiled and waved his hand. I definitely won't forget. I've already remembered it in my heart. Mrs. Kimura left, satisfied. Wu Yu pointed at her flower shop. Do you want to go in and have a seat? Aquino adjusted the hat on his head. It's okay. I still have something to do. Mrs. Kimura asked me to help her find her cat. Wu Yu pursed her lips and smiled. Thank you, Officer Aquino. Did Now give you any trouble today? No, the little guy was very obedient today. Aquino's young and handsome face smiled gently. How about you? Did you have a good day? Yes, business is good and I'm in a good mood. Anyway, thank you for taking care of Now for me. Wu Yu smiled and patted his shoulder. When you're on vacation this weekend, I'll treat you to good food. He shrugged. Sure, but I prefer you to cook for me. She smiled and raised her eyebrows. Don't push your luck. He laughed heartily. In the evening, Wu Yu closed the shop. She carried Now in one hand and carried the vegetables she had bought from the market in the other. She walked upstairs. Mommy, I want to eat braised fish today. Now hugged her neck and said in a baby voice. Weo kissed his tender little face and smiled. Okay, Mommy will help the little gluttonous cat cook fish. After dinner, she sat on the sofa with her son in her arms and taught him to speak Chinese. Although she lived in Japan, she had never forgotten that she was from China. Her son had to learn Chinese and Chinese characters. After tutoring her son for more than an hour, she bathed him, told him stories and coaxed him to sleep. When she was done, it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening. Weo glanced at his watch, took off the glasses on the bridge of his nose, and took the laptop on the table over. She turned on her computer and typed in Bai Tengshin's name in the search box. News about him flooded out in an overwhelming manner. The latest and most popular news was that he had participated in a television program to find his wife's whereabouts in front of the entire nation. Every word he said struck deep into her heart, especially the part where he said, "My heart has been sorted out," which made her heart tremble. She clenched her fists and stared at his handsome face. For the past 3 years, she thought that she could forget him, but Now's existence kept reminding her that her son had a father. She was still thinking about her son's father. Damn it. Her gaze slowly moved from his face to his left hand. He was wearing a diamond ring on his ring finger. She raised her left hand. There was a ring of the same design on her ring finger. Her nose felt like it was choking on chili. It was unbearably spicy and her eyes sparkled. Hongcha 866. Chapter 381. The sun shone warmly on the window. A woman in a white sweater and a long woolen dress stood among the flowers. She had a gentle smile on her lips and her eyes were slightly downcast as she quietly tended to the flowers in her hands. Outside the window, a tall man in a black suit had been standing there for a long time. His handsome face was expressionless as his deep eyes stared intently at the woman standing in the flower shop. It was her. It was really her. The woman who had made him yearn for her for thousands of days and nights. Ding dong. The wind chime at the door made a crisp and pleasant sound. A pair of slender legs stepped through the door. Wu smiled and looked up. Welcome. The next second, the smile on her face froze. At the door stood a tall and handsome man. Because of the light, his face was dark and gloomy, but his body exuded an aura of disdain. His pitch-black eyes stared intently at her as if he wanted to see through her organs and penetrate deep into her bones. She pursed her lips and quietly met his gaze. The two of them looked at each other like this, as if they wanted to engrave each other deeply in their minds. Mommy, a soft child's voice came from the stairs. Now was wearing Pikachu pajamas. He rubbed his sleepy eyes and shook his little butt as he slowly walked down the stairs. Wuyu's eyes flashed with panic. She quickly turned around, intending to hide her son. However, Mika Kito was faster than her. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his arms, hugging her tightly. His hot breath sprayed on her earlobes. She squirmed uneasily, lowered her voice, and said hurriedly, "Let go of me. Now is coming down. If there's anything, let's talk outside." His arm was firmly pressed on her waist. His eyes were fixed on the little ball of meat that appeared on the stairs. His voice was low and dangerous. "No, I want to let my son know about our relationship now. I'm begging you. Let go." Her voice was anxious and flustered. The fake calmness on her face had been torn apart, and a pleading expression emerged. His cold heart actually softened the moment he heard her soft pleading. He slowly let go of her hand and she was like a panicked little rabbit, immediately jumping out of his arms. She quickly adjusted her facial expression and smiled at their son who was approaching them. Now, you're awake? Mommy, who's that strange uncle?" Now swayed his little but as he walked down the last step. He tilted his head curiously and looked at Mika Kito behind her. Mommy's friend. Wuyu stroked the hair by her ear and pursed her lips. His handsome face was full of gentleness. He held now. And handsome now. Yes. Now nodded vigorously. He puffed up his pink cheeks and muttered, "Mommy likes to call me now. Actually, my name is now." Mika Kito tried hard to control the urge to pull now into his arms. He smiled even more gently. Now. What a cute name. The little boy's eyes sparkled. He said unhappily, "You can't call me now. Only mommy can call me now." Mika Kito's eyes were full of smiles. He rubbed his soft hair dotingly. "If I were your daddy, would I call you now?" The little boy tilted his head. His beautiful big eyes were full of curiosity. "But I don't have a daddy." "Uncle, you're so strange. Don't have a daddy?" The little boy's innocent words were like a hammer that struck Mika Kito's heart hard. He suddenly turned his head and glanced dangerously at Wu Yu, who lowered her head and pretended to be innocent. Mika Kito picked Now up from the ground. He stared into his clear eyes and smiled gently. Now, I'll be your daddy, okay?" Now shook his head. "I like Akiko. I want Akiko to be my daddy." "Akiko? That damned woman. She actually hooked up with another man." Mika Kito was furious. He wanted to drag her and his son home right now. "Uncle, you look terrible. It's so scary." The little boy tugged at his clothes and shrunk his neck. However, he didn't show any fear on his face. His bright eyes shone with a sly light. What a mischievous little boy. Mika Kito's heart softened and his anger dissipated. He kissed him on the cheek. No. Watch carefully. I'll definitely be your daddy." Now wiped his little face in disgust and pouted. "You can't kiss me. Only mommy can kiss me. You can't make me now either." Mika Kito was amused by this cute little boy. He laughed heartily. This was the first time in 3 years that he laughed so happily. Now was very active. He ran wildly upstairs and downstairs. He was like an active pony that couldn't stop for a moment. One moment he ran to his grandmother's house next door to play with the little cat. The next moment he led his car to a fish stall and squatted in front of it. He muttered, braised fish. It wasn't until Mika Kito bought him a big fish that he held in his hand that he followed him home with Gigai. Mika Kito understood why Suzuka named their son Now. He must have been very noisy when he was just born. She had to take care of her son alone and take care of the flower shop. When Mika Kito thought about how hard it was for Suzaku, he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Soon it was night time. Mika Kito sat on the sofa with his son in his arms. His thoughts were all on Suza. She was wearing an apron and preparing dinner in the kitchen. She stood gracefully in front of the kitchen counter. Her movements were skillful and her expression was gentle. 3 years had not left many traces on her. On the contrary, she had become more charming. After being sculpted by time, her entire body radiated an irresistible charm. Now, wash your hands and eat. There's your favorite braised fish." Suzaku's cheerful voice came from the kitchen. Mika Kito smiled and rubbed his son's hair. Now, wash your hands and eat. Don't call me now. Now glared at him unhappily. He slid down the sofa from his arms and ran to the bathroom to wash his hands. Mika Kito was worried about him and followed him. When he entered the bathroom, he saw the little boy standing on a small stool. He put his little hands under the faucet and carefully washed his little hands. His serious look was extremely adorable, causing a strong sense of pride to rise in Baitingshin's heart. He had a son, an obedient and smart son. He lifted Now from the stool and kissed him hard on the cheek. "Uncle, you're so strange. Why do you always kiss me? If you kiss me again, I'll get angry. I'll really get angry." The little boy frowned and stared at him with puffed cheeks. Where did this strange uncle come from? Did he really not forget to take his medicine? "Silly boy, I'm your daddy." Mika Kito laughed in a low voice. Now curled his lips in disdain. "Hey, don't lie to me. Mommy said that I don't have a daddy. I'll get even with your mommy later." "Mph." Mika Kito rubbed his head. "Let's go eat." After 3 years, they were once again sitting around the same table to eat. Baitingshin looked at Zhu Kei, who was sitting across from him. She was seriously helping Now remove the fish bones. He suddenly had an illusion that she had never left and had only gone to the supermarket to buy his and his son's favorite food, that's all. Now didn't like to eat vegetables. He always secretly threw vegetables under the table when his mommy wasn't looking. He secretly glanced at Suzo, who was carefully removing fish bones, and quietly poked the vegetables from the plate to the table with his chopsticks. Suzaku suddenly looked up at him and said sternly, Now, you can't just eat meat and not vegetables. Eat the carrots and green peppers. But I don't like it. Now pouted sadly. His big eyes were filled with tears and he looked very pitiful. Mika Kito couldn't help but feel sorry for her son. She said, It's okay if the child doesn't like it. Don't force him. Suzaku threatened him with her eyes and motioned for him to stop talking. Then she stared at Now and said, Now, vegetables can replenish your body's vitamins. If you want to grow taller, you have to eat vegetables and gigai. Do you understand? Okay. Now mumbled unwillingly. He picked up the vegetables with his children's chopsticks, frowned, and swallowed them painfully as if he was taking medicine. Mika Kito's eyes were full of love. She stroked her son's little head and said softly, Now, do you know why rabbits like to eat carrots? Now asked curiously, why? Because rabbits can run fast after eating carrots. Do you want to run as fast as a rabbit? Then you can catch up with Grandma Kimura's little tabby cat, Mika Kito said patiently. Now thought about it seriously and nodded firmly. I want to eat carrots too. Good boy. Here, eat up all these carrots. Mika Kito gave him some carrots with her chopsticks and encouraged him with a smile. Gigai finished the carrots and poked the green peppers on the plate with his chopsticks. He tilted his head and asked, Where's the green peppers? Why do you want to eat green peppers? Mika Kito's eyes moved and she chuckled. Eating more green peppers can make you a strong little man. Then you can help mommy work and she won't have to work so hard, okay? Yes, I want to become a man. The little boy was fooled by her words and happily ate the green peppers. Suzaku was speechless. Eat more green peppers and become a strong little man? Was she bullying the child because he hadn't watched Popeye's cartoon? After dinner, Mika Kito took over Suzaku's job and taught Now Chinese. Looking at the father and son happily sitting on the sofa, Suzaku, who was cutting fruit in the kitchen, couldn't help but smile. It wasn't the first time Mika Kito bathed a child. He had bathed Xiaobao before, but Xiaobao wasn't as naughty as Now. Now sat in the bathtub and played with the duckling, splashing water everywhere. When he walked out of the bathroom with Now in his arms, he was soaked. Beauty novel, Song Shu 566. Chapter 382. Suzaku gave him a towel and took Now from his arms. Go and wash up. I'll take Now to bed, she said softly. Her son was lying on the bed, extremely excited. He made a racket for a long time until Vermilion Bird put on a stern face and told him to make a fuss. Only then did he quiet down and obediently close his eyes to sleep. Coming out of her son's room, Vermilion Bird happened to bump into Beitang Shin, who had just finished bathing. His upper body was naked, and there was a white bath towel around his waist. His hair was wet, and the water droplets slid down his hair, sliding over his strong chest and strong waist, disappearing into the mysterious place covered by the bath towel. Her face was slightly hot and she looked away uncomfortably. He strode over to her and lifted her chin with his right hand. Wifey, it's time for us to have a good talk. Her face heated up even more. She bit her lip and said softly, I'm not your wifey. Don't call me that. She put her hands behind her back and secretly took off the ring on her ring finger and held it tightly in her palm. Mika Kito's eyes flickered and his smile deepened. He suddenly pulled her left hand out from behind her back and pried her slender fingers apart. He used his fingers to caress her ring finger and chuckled happily. This white mark was left behind by the ring, right? It seems like you've been wearing it for a long time. How long? 3 years? Her eyes flickered and she bit her lip tightly and remained silent. He suddenly pulled out her right hand that was hidden behind her back. She clenched her right hand into a tight fist and refused to let go. He smiled mischievously. What are you hiding in your palm? Is it the ring? The moment he reunited with her, he had already scanned her entire body like a radar. Of course, he knew that she was wearing their wedding ring. She secretly took off her wedding ring. This little trick couldn't escape his eyes. Suzaku looked at his mischievous gaze angrily. Yes, I'm hiding a ring in my palm. Are you happy now? She grabbed his hand and stuffed the ring into his palm. I'll return it to you now. We don't owe each other anything in the future. You can leave now, she said angrily. Mika Kito didn't get angry. Instead, he chuckled softly. He held her finger and wanted to put the ring back on her finger. We already have a child. How can you say that we don't owe each other anything? Wifey, stop playing and come home with me. The ring slowly slipped onto her finger. She lowered her eyes and looked at the beautiful ring. She said indifferently, How did you find me? Mika Kito took out his phone and showed her a photo. This photo was posted on the forum by a female junior high student named Little Sun. The post said that the lady boss of the flower shop is very gentle and beautiful. The boss's daughter, Xiao Bao, is very cute. Suzuka looked up at the photo. It was a side profile photo of her carrying Now in the flower shop. Both mother and son were smiling happily. It seemed that Little Sun had secretly taken the photo from outside the window. In the photo, she was wearing black-rimmed glasses and her neat fringe covered her forehead. She looked like a completely different person from before. She didn't expect him to recognize her. He chuckled. I spent a lot of effort to find you. I have to say that you're very good at hiding yourself. Thank you for your compliment, she said mildly. He took a step forward and pulled her into his arms. He stroked her hair and said softly, I'm not here to compliment you. I'm here to take you home. Honey, come home with me. Her face was directly pressed against his moist and naked chest. She couldn't help but tremble. After a moment of silence, she said, No, I like my current life. His eyes narrowed dangerously. Do you like your current life or do you like Akiko? He was jealous when he heard from his son that Akiko had the ambition to become his son's daddy. She pursed her lips. Akiko is just my friend. Even now, she still didn't want to be misunderstood by him. He hugged her even tighter. His hard chest was pressed against her softness. His tone was unbelievably gentle. You like flowers? When we return to Tokyo, I'll get someone to plant the entire garden. Come back with me, okay? It's not about the flowers. Suzuka pushed his chest. The two of them were pressed against each other, making her feel pressured and threatened. Then what's the problem? His purpose of coming here was to bring her and their child home. No matter what problems they encountered, they had to solve them one by one. She looked up at him. I like this kind of peaceful life. Here, my heart is peaceful. When we return to Tokyo, you can also live a peaceful life. You're just my wife and Now's mommy. You don't have to worry about anything else. He held her face and tried to persuade her. Her lips curved into a cold smile and she shook her head. No, when we return to Tokyo, I'll want more. If I can't get it, I'll be very sad. Here, I won't want those things, so I won't be sad. He stared into her eyes. I can give you whatever you want. She pointed her finger at his heart and looked at him provocatively. What if what I want is your heart? My heart is already yours. Without hesitation, he held her finger and placed it on his chest. His mesmerizing eyes gazed at her face as he said in a deep voice, Do you feel it? It's beating faster because of you. His heart was beating very hard and fast. The chest under her palm was like a flame, burning her finger. She retracted her finger uneasily. But is it because of now that you want to bring me back? No, he held her shoulders agitatedly. Silly, I've already fallen in love with you. It's because I love you that I want to be with you. It's not because of now or because of responsibility. What do I have to do to make you believe me? Her tears streamed down her face. She rarely cried. Even when giving birth was so painful, she had never cried. She thought that she would never hear him say that word again in her life. She bit her lip and cried quietly. She didn't sob or complain. She just cried quietly, but it made Mika Kito's heart ache. He hurriedly wiped her tears and comforted her gently. Don't cry. Be good. The vermilion bird gradually stopped crying and withdrew from his embrace. She said in a low voice, Give me some time, let me think about it. Rome wasn't built in a day. They needed to sort out their emotional entanglements, and it wasn't something that could be resolved in a short period of time. Mika Kito understood this, so he didn't want to force her. Otherwise, it would only drive her further away from him. He smiled. Okay, I'll give you some time to think. But while you're thinking, I want to stay with you. This was the only way he could feel at ease. She rejected him without hesitation. If you stay here, it will cause gossip. He raised his eyebrows domineeringly. We're husband and wife. What's wrong with staying together? If they want to gossip, let them. She glared at him. Correction, we're not husband and wife yet. How are we not husband and wife? Although we didn't hold a wedding, we've already registered our marriage. She explained, there was too little time at the time. The China embassy in Japan didn't have time to issue a certificate of marriage. We didn't complete the marriage procedures. He smiled smugly. After you ran away from the wedding, I've already taken care of it. So, we're now legally husband and wife. She lost to him. He stroked her hair. So, we can rest now. She blushed and slapped his hand away. You'll sleep on the sofa tonight. Mika Kito glanced at the sofa in the living room and smiled bitterly. Can you really bear to let me curl up in such a small space? She grunted. If you don't want to, you can stay in a hotel. There's a very comfortable hotel 50 meters from here. He said seriously, I suddenly realized that sleeping on the sofa is pretty good. It's very soft. Wait a minute. I'll go get the quilt and pillow. She turned and walked to her bedroom. The corners of her lips curled up. Mika Kito curled up on the sofa miserably. He tossed and turned for a long time, unable to fall asleep. What was this? The warm and fragrant woman was less than 10 meters away, but he was curled up on the small sofa and hugging the quilt to sleep alone. Around midnight, Now staggered out of the children's room. He jumped on the ground, and the voice-activated lights on the living room wall immediately lit up. Mika Kito woke up in a daze. She looked up alertly and saw Now walking toward the bathroom in a daze. Now, what are you doing? Mika Kito got down from the sofa and followed behind her son. Now seemed to be startled by him. His little body suddenly trembled twice, and he turned around stiffly. His sleepy eyes were completely opened, and he pouted his little mouth, as if he was about to cry. Don't be afraid. It's me. Now, be a good boy. Don't cry. Mika Kito didn't expect to scare her son. She felt guilty and quickly squatted down to comfort him. Tears were about to flow out of his eyes, but the little guy didn't cry out loud. He said sadly, Uncle, you scared me. It's okay. Don't be afraid. Mika Kito stroked his thin back and said softly, Do you want to go to the bathroom? Now pouted and nodded. Uncle will help you. Mika Kito picked him up and walked into the bathroom to help him pee. He twisted his little body and said embarrassedly, I can pee on my own. Put me down. Are you sure? Mika Kito put him down. He dragged the stool to the toilet, climbed up, and spread his legs. Before he took off his pants, he turned back to warn Mika Kito. Uncle, I want to pee. Turn around. Don't peek. Bei-Tang-shin raised his eyebrows in amusement. Sure enough, he turned around and didn't look at him. The sound of water splashing came from the toilet. After the little guy finished peeing, he washed his hands and flushed the toilet. It was hard to imagine that Suzaku had raised her son to be so independent and sensible. He was so sensible that it made his heart ache. Come and see. Song Shu 566. Chapter 383. The wind chimes rang and the glass door of the flower shop was pushed open. Hi, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, what flowers would you like to buy? A handsome man in an apron greeted the customers with a smile as he held a pot of flowers. Ah, you're so handsome. Uncle, are you the helper that Sister Wu Yu hired? The female junior high school students shrieked excitedly with hearts in their eyes. Yes, I'm a new employee. Please take care of me. Mika Kito's handsome face had a warm smile without a trace of displeasure. Why do I feel that uncle looks a little familiar? Xiao Xuan rubbed her nose and searched carefully in her mind. Ah! Chiba exclaimed as she pointed at Bei-Tang-shin and said excitedly, Xiao Xuan, I remember now. This is Uncle Baiting, the the one who posted the notice on TV, looking for his wife. The girls were so excited that they were about to go crazy. They rushed forward and asked all at once, "Uncle, are you really Mika Kito? Uncle, is Sister Wu Yu the person you're looking for? Uncle, is Now your son? Uncle, Uncle." Bengshan had a faint smile on his face. After waiting for them to ask questions, he slowly said, "That's right, I am Bei Tang Shen. The Sister Wu you speak of is my wife. Now is also my son." "Ah, oh my God, Xiaoxuan, pinch me. I'm so excited that I'm about to faint. Sob, I didn't expect Uncle Beitang to be even more handsome in person than on TV. Sister Wu Yu is so lucky. Now that I look closer, Now looks a lot like Uncle Bei." The girls finally suppressed their excitement. Chiba asked curiously, "Uncle, why are you here alone? Where's Sister Wu Yu and Now?" "Who said he's alone? You love-struck idiots just didn't see us." Suzaku came out from behind a tall and lush potted plant. She was wearing an apron and holding a pair of scissors in her hand. It seemed that she was repairing the potted plant. At her feet squatted Xiao Now. The little fellow held her head with both hands and smiled slyly. Xiaoxuan covered her mouth and giggled. "Sister Wu Yu, I'm sorry. We were just too surprised." "That's right, big Sister Wu Yu. I didn't expect you to really be Uncle's wife. You lied to us the last time we asked you." Qian Yi stuck out her tongue mischievously with a hint of complaint in her voice. Suzaku smiled. "You kids don't understand adult matters." She didn't seem to want to stay on this topic any longer. She lowered her head and carefully trimmed the potted plants. The girls were a little embarrassed and didn't know what to say to ease the suddenly stiff atmosphere. Now stuck his tongue out mischievously at them and rushed to Mika Kito's side like a little cannonball. He hugged his slender legs and raised his little head to ask, "Uncle, are you really my daddy?" "I told you from the beginning that I'm your daddy. I didn't lie to you, did I?" Mika Kito picked him up and pinched his pink cheeks. He said with a doting expression, "Good boy, call me daddy." Now tilted his head and thought for a moment. Suddenly, he shook his head and pouted. "No. I'll only call you that if Mommy wants me to." Mika Kito was helpless. He glanced at the girls who were staring at him and smiled bitterly. "Look, your big sister Wu Yu still doesn't want to accept me. You have to help me put in a few good words in front of her." The girls secretly glanced at Suzaku, who was busying herself behind the potted plants, and secretly made an "okay" gesture. Xiaoxuan whispered, "Uncle, girls like romance. You should do something romantic to make big sister Wu Yu happy. Maybe she'll accept you if she's happy." "That's right, Uncle. I have a book here that I can lend to you." One of the girls secretly took out a comic book called The Story of Love from her bag and whispered, "This is a comic about love that the popular manga artist, Sensei Kyeko, specially drew for boys and girls. It sells very well." "Okay, I'll take a good look at it." Mika Kito cooperatively lowered his voice and hid the comic book under his clothes. Now blinked his beautiful big eyes and moved his red lips, as if he was going to reveal their secret. Xiaoxuan quickly covered his mouth and winked at him. Now, you're the best. Don't tell anyone about our little secret, including your mommy. Got it?" Now nodded confusedly. Now is such a good boy. Big sister will treat you to candy." Chiba immediately stuffed a piece of chocolate into Now's mouth when Xiaoxuan withdrew her hand. Xiaoxuan deliberately raised her voice and said cheerfully, "Uncle, I want to buy lilies. Please bandage them for me." "Uncle, I want to buy yellow roses and baby's breath." "Uncle, I want to buy." The children were trying to hide something and deliberately shouted loudly. "Okay, please wait a moment." Mika Kito's smile widened. He began to understand why Suzaku didn't want to leave this place. The people here were kind and simple. She had formed a bond with them and couldn't bear to leave. Mika Kito had been staying at Suzaku's place for 3 days. It was impossible for him to eat and sleep with her every day. He still curled up on the sofa miserably every night. He helped her take care of her business, and she greeted the customers without putting on any airs. She warmly chatted with the customers and neighbors, enthusiastically promoting his ownership. Almost everyone in the town knew that he was Wuyo's husband, causing Chiu Yi, who had a crush on Vermilion Bird, to be depressed for several days. Their relationship had died before it could blossom. Regarding this, Bei Tangshan was very gratified. The weeds and trees surrounding his wife were finally cleared. The day was over. Suzuka mercilessly pushed Mika Kito out of her bedroom. She smiled and said, "Good night." Mika Kito curled up on the soft sofa. He couldn't let this go on. God knows how long his little woman would throw a tantrum. He had to speed up and make Gigai surrender. Vermilion Bird was lying on the bed. Thinking of a certain someone's deflated expression when he was pushed out of the door, she felt full of joy, and the corners of her lips rose high. She planned to observe him for a few more days. If he passed the assessment, she would follow the steps he gave her. The crisp ringtone of her mobile phone interrupted her wild thoughts. Zhu Kei glanced at the caller ID and put the phone to her ear to answer. "Hongling, what's the matter?" "Sister Suzaku, we've found Harada's whereabouts. That guy is too cunning. Qin Yen and I have tried to catch him twice but failed. So, we have to ask you to do it yourself." Suzaku frowned. "Where is Harada now?" "In downtown Sapporo. Qin Yen is monitoring his hiding place. We're waiting for you so that we can catch him in one fell swoop. Come and see." Hongcha 866. Chapter 384. Suzaku thought for a moment and said, "I can't get out now. Mika Kito is with me." "What? He found you? Damn, didn't the Miyagi police say that they would help you cover up your whereabouts? How can the Metropolitan Police Department be so unreliable?" "Don't get too worked up, Hongling." Red Sparrow massaged her temples and sighed. "You can't blame Miyagi for this. It's not easy for him to cover for me for 3 years. Anyway, I can't come out now. Why don't you let Miyagi and the others take care of Harada?" Hongling shouted excitedly, "No, Harada Yushir is worth 5 million. If we get that reward, how many orphans can we help? I don't want to give up such a good opportunity to the Metropolitan Police Department. Suzaku, please think of another way, please." Okay, I'll give it a try. Wait for my news." After hanging up the phone, Suzaku looked at her watch. It was only 10 o'clock. If she went to downtown Sapporo now, she would be back in town by 12 o'clock at the latest. Mika Kito shouldn't be able to detect her presence. She walked out of the bedroom, turned on the wall lamp in the living room, and deliberately made her footsteps heavy. She walked to the kitchen, vigilantly watching Mika Kito lying on the sofa. Mika Kito didn't move from the moment she entered the kitchen until she heated up a glass of milk and brought it back to the room. She thought that he should be asleep. Suzaku changed into her night clothes, took out a car key from the bedside table, put it in her trouser pocket, and quietly walked out the door. The moment she locked the door, Mika Kito suddenly opened his eyes. His dark jade-like pupils stared at the locked door. It was late at night. The street was dark, the street was dim, and there was no one. A Porsche sports car slowly drove out of the underground garage and sped away under the cover of the night. Mika Kito stood at the intersection, looking in the direction where the Porsche disappeared. His face was cold and terrifying. "Damn woman, how much more is she hiding from me?" A Maybach drove out from another street and stopped in front of Mika Kito. Jiang Dao unlocked the car door. Mika Kito quickly got into the back seat and ordered, "Follow her." When Suzaku arrived in Sapporo, it was already 12 o'clock in the morning. Some streets were deserted, while others were the busiest. She used the car phone to contact Hong Ling and learn their exact location. They drove through the downtown area for a while, and finally turned into a secluded street. She wandered around for nearly 10 minutes before she arrived at her destination. Calm as far as she knew, this was the black market of Sapporo, where crooks mixed with honest folk. Violent attacks often occurred here, and even the police were not willing to deal with this place, for fear of provoking the forces of the mafia. No wonder Harada was hiding in this place. The Porsche stopped in an open space. Suzaku was wearing a tight black suit. Her hair was tied up high, and her beautiful face was as cold as ice. The ruthless killer Suzaku was resurrected at this moment. "Sister Suzaku, Two black figures quickly ran to her side. One was a man, and the other was a woman. Both of them were in their 20s. They were wearing black night clothes with pistols and handcuffs hidden at their waists. Let's go. Be careful. Don't alarm others. Suzaku lowered her voice and waved at them. Harada Yasushi was a perverted murderer. He had raped and killed 7 women and buried their bodies under his garden. After the crime, he fled from Tokyo to Hokkaido. Suzaku and the other 2 were bounty hunters. They specialized in capturing wanted criminals for high bounties. Usually, Qin Yen and Hong Ling were the ones who took action. They only asked Suzaku for help when they encountered more difficult fugitives and couldn't handle them. The 3 of them split up and planned to surround Harada Yasushi, capture him alive, and send him to the police station. Suzaku's right hand was on the pistol at her waist. She walked in the dark alley with high vigilance. From time to time, she could hear the meowing of stray cats and the sound of drug addicts trading. She walked to the deepest part of the alley and hid behind a wall. If Harada Yasushi wanted to escape, this was one of the places he had to go. Hong Ling was waiting for him at the other place. Panicked and hurried footsteps sounded on the empty stone road. A strong man in his 30s held a gun in his hand, shooting behind him as he fled in panic. Suzaku jumped down from the wall and kicked the gun out of the man's hand. She twisted the man's hands behind his back and pressed him heavily on the ground. The man shouted in panic, "Spare me! I don't know anything. I don't know anything." Suzaku's eyes narrowed. She turned his face around. This face was different from the one on the wanted poster. They had the wrong person. This wasn't Harada Yasushi. She said coldly, "Where's Harada Yasushi?" I don't know. A man gave me a sum of money and told me to run in this direction. Damn it, I fell for Harada's trick of luring me away. Suzaku kicked him away and said to Qin Yen, who was chasing after them, "This isn't Harada. He must have gone in Hong Ling's direction. Quick, let's go." On their way to Hong Ling's side, a gunshot suddenly rang out in the silent night. Zhu Kei's pupils suddenly constricted, and a wave of uneasiness surged in her heart. She quickened her pace and rushed forward. Under the dim light, the 2 figures grappled with each other. Their pistols had been tossed far away, so they could only engage in hand-to-hand combat. Hong Ling was good at kung fu, but Yuan Tian was not bad either. The 2 of them fought fiercely. Suzaku ran forward and kicked Harada's leg. She then pointed the gun at his temple and said coldly, "Let her go." Harada glared at Suzaku. His face was twisted with hatred. Finally, he let go of Hong Ling under her coercion. Hong Ling held her knees with both hands and panted heavily. Damn it, Harada Yasushi's grip was too strong. He almost broke her neck. "Cuff him," Suzaku said coldly. Qin Yen took out a pair of handcuffs from her back and cuffed Harada's wrists. The 3 of them walked out of the alley with Harada in tow. After walking for less than 10 meters, they saw a man in a black suit standing under a street lamp. He was tall and muscular like a statue. He stood straight and stared at them coldly without any expression on his face. Suzaku's heart skipped a beat. It was Mika Kito. Hong Ling frowned. "Sister Suza, that person seems to be..." "Sure, stop talking. Sister Suzaku, let's take Harada to the police station first." Qin Yen saw that Suzaku's expression had darkened. She immediately called Hong Ling and left with Harada. Suzaku pursed her lips and walked towards Mika Kito. Under the light, his handsome face was cold. She leaned closer to him and said softly, "I'm sorry for hiding it from you." Mika Kito's thin lips curved into a cold smile. She suppressed the anger in her voice. "Have you been like this for the past 3 years?" She had been with him for so long. Of course, she knew that he was on the verge of exploding. The stupidest thing to do was to go against him, and the smartest thing to do was to show weakness. She took a step forward and hugged his waist slowly. She leaned her head on his chest and said softly, "I was wrong. I apologize." Mika Kito froze. Although they already had a child, they rarely had physical contact, especially when she took the initiative to get close to him. It seemed like this was the first time. The time when he was under the influence of the aphrodisiac didn't count because he wasn't conscious. He lowered his eyes and looked at the woman in his arms. She was so gentle and pitiful. She was completely different from the cold and aloof person he used to know. It was as if a basin of cold water had been poured over his head, extinguishing most of the anger in his heart. He wrapped his arms around her waist and hugged her tightly. He said in a deep voice, "Don't do such a dangerous thing again." She raised her head and looked at him, her eyes filled with smiles. "Got it. I won't do it again." Although he had already received her guarantee, Mika Kito was still a little unhappy. Just thinking about how she had put herself in danger for the past 3 years made him feel like he was about to go crazy. He pulled her into his car with a dark face and sat in the driver's seat. He chased Jiang Dao into Suzuka's car and ordered Jiang Dao to drive her Porsche back to town and take care of his precious son. "Wait a minute." Suzuka grabbed his arm and asked in confusion, "Aren't we going back together?" He grunted and ignored her. He stepped on the accelerator and drove the car onto the main road. The car drove on the busy street for a while and finally stopped outside a 5-star hotel. Mika Kito threw the car keys to the hotel valet and dragged Suzuka forward. The lobby manager immediately greeted them and bowed respectfully to them. "President, Madam, how may I help you?" "Prepare a presidential suite." This hotel chain was a property of the Bo Ao Group. The lobby manager naturally complied with Mika Kito's request and immediately took the room card from the front desk. "Okay, there's nothing else for you to do here. Go back to work." Mika Kito took the room card and dragged Suzuku to the elevator. Vermilion Bird had a bad premonition in her heart. Why did you bring me here? I want to go home and take care of now." She clung to the elevator door and stubbornly refused to go in. Mika Kito narrowed his eyes dangerously. "Jiang Dao will take care of now. Hurry up and go in, or I'll carry you upstairs and let everyone watch. It's your choice." The corner of her mouth twitched. "You win." She walked into the elevator reluctantly. He went in after her and quickly pressed the button. The elevator went straight to the top floor. It was late at night and the corridor was empty. Suzuka followed behind him and walked into the luxurious presidential suite. The door slammed shut. Beitangshan suddenly turned around and pulled her into his chest. His strong arms tightly imprisoned her in his embrace. He lowered his head and forcefully kissed her lips. He fiercely attacked her as if he wanted to punish her for leaving without saying goodbye for 3 years. She twisted her waist uncomfortably and almost suffocated. His movements became gentler as he bit her lips and whispered, "Idiot, breathe." He didn't expect her to be so inexperienced that she didn't even know how to kiss. This discovery made Beitangshan go wild with joy. He was her first man, and he would also be her last man. He licked her lips, tempting her to open her mouth. His nimble tongue quietly entered her mouth, entangling with hers. He held the back of her head with one hand and led her to the bed. His other hand swiftly unzipped her night suit and took off her jacket. The air was filled with an ambiguous atmosphere and the atmosphere was heated. Suzuka was at a loss and could only follow his rhythm. She allowed him to take off her clothes one by one. When she was only left with her underwear, she was already pressed against him on the huge bed. She closed her eyes, not daring to meet his burning gaze. Her sense of hearing and touch became especially sensitive. She heard the sound of his shirt buttons falling, and she also heard the sound of his metal belt buckle being opened. The fabric under her palms disappeared, and it was replaced by hot and smooth skin. His chest was pressed against her softness, and his lips passionately kissed her chin and neck. Suzuka felt the blood in her body getting hotter and hotter. It was so hot that it seemed to be on fire. An inexplicable desire arose in her heart. She was both looking forward to and afraid of what would happen next. That night, the tearing pain was still fresh in her mind. When he kissed her dogwood, her whole body trembled and she nervously grabbed his arm. Mika Kito raised his head and looked into her eyes. Her watery eyes were filled with confusion and uneasiness. Her sexy lips were tensed up nervously. He thought of the pain he had caused her that night. It must have left a shadow in her heart. His heart ached even more. His large palm gently kneaded her softness and he whispered, "Wifey, don't be afraid. This time, he wanted to take it slow and let her experience extreme pleasure. His hand slowly slid down, and she felt a chill below her body. The last piece of fabric had been removed by him, and his palm was already pressed against that quiet spot. With a strong sense of love and indulgence, he led her to explore the mystery together. His rough fingertips touched the softness in the forest, causing her whole body to tremble. She couldn't help but raise her beautiful neck, and mist appeared in her starry eyes. She didn't know what to do. She wanted to get rid of that throbbing feeling, but she couldn't escape the desire in her heart. His large hand was still wantonly teasing her as if that was the most sensitive part of her body. As long as he touched it slightly, her whole body would tremble. There was a burning flame between the two of them. She restlessly moved her slender waist as if she was asking for more. His whole body was tense, and that part was already hard as iron. However, he didn't rush in recklessly. Instead, he carefully continued to kiss her. His wet and hot kisses almost covered her entire body. When she was kissed to the point of forgetfulness, he quietly went in. Although they had already done enough foreplay, her body still tensed up at the sudden intrusion of a secret that had not been open to anyone for 3 years. Wifey, relax. Don't be afraid. Mika Kito was already at the limit of his endurance. Beads of sweat dripped from his forehead and landed on her fair skin. He temporarily stopped his actions and used his hand to rub the part that fit. A wave of numbness spread from there. She gradually relaxed and opened her eyes slightly. Seeing that he was enduring so much pain, her heart softened. She took the initiative to reach out and wrap her arms around his strong waist. She shyly whispered, "It's done." He saw that she didn't seem to be in so much pain anymore, so he tried to move. The pleasure of being tightly wrapped came like a tidal wave, and he couldn't hold it back any longer. He followed his instincts and went deeper and deeper. Awesome novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 385. The slow rhythm gradually changed and became as fierce as a storm. She floated up and down with him, indulging in the pleasure he brought. Mika Kito had been abstinent for so long, so of course, he couldn't be satisfied with just 1 or 2 times. He hugged her on the bed, on the table, on the windowsill, in the bathtub, and devoured her over and over again. She was so tired that she couldn't even open her eyes. In the end, her whole body hung limply on his body. He hugged her tightly, pressed into the deepest part of her body, and whispered those 3 words in her ear. Tears fell uncontrollably. She hugged him tightly in a daze, thinking that she was in a dream. Suzuka didn't wake up until the evening of the next day. She found herself curled up in Mika Kito's arms, her hands pressed against his bare chest. He seemed to have been awake for a long time. He looked down at her face and smiled slightly. "You're awake." His voice was mellow and gentle. His chest was full of ambiguous marks, and she couldn't help but recall the intense affair last night. Her cheeks burned slightly, and she didn't dare to look into his eyes. "What's wrong? Does it still hurt?" Mika Kito saw that her head was lowered and she didn't say anything. He lifted her chin, his face full of concern. She blushed even harder, and she softly said, There was an unnoticeable awkwardness between his brows. "I used too much strength last night. I'll improve in the future." Suzuka's mouth twitched. She couldn't help but say dryly, "It's not a matter of whether you use too much strength or not, but the number of times," he coughed. "So your husband is quite capable, but he's also quite annoying?" She snorted but didn't say anything. He kissed her hard on the cheek and reached out to take a tube of ointment from the bedside table. He unscrewed the cap, and a fragrant smell wafted into her nose. She didn't understand. "What are you doing?" "I'm helping you apply the ointment." He smeared a little ointment on his finger and stretched his finger to the inside of her leg. She closed her leg shyly. "I'll do it myself." "Take your hand away." "Honey, you're clamping my hand so tightly. How can I take it out?" His tone was serious, but the content of his words was full of lust. She couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. She loosened her legs and gritted her teeth. "Come out quickly." His lips curled into a mischievous smile. He did not do as she wished. Instead, he directly penetrated her. She let out a soft cry out of reflex. Her body trembled as she clung tightly to his embrace. The tightness he felt with his fingers made him involuntarily think of Feng Kuang last night, which almost drove him crazy. He forcefully suppressed the fire in his heart and slowly smeared it. After applying the ointment, Suzaku was already limp in his arms, and he wasn't any better. A certain part of his body was on fire. Considering her body's condition, he could only secretly take deep breaths to suppress his throbbing. Gurgle gurgle. Mika Kito chuckled darkly. Suzaku glared at him. What are you laughing at? Haven't you seen others being hungry before? Mika Kito stroked her hair good-naturedly. Don't be angry. The waiter will send the food over right away. The waiter pushed the dining cart and sent a sumptuous dinner to the living room. After washing up, the two of them wore bathrobes and sat at the dining table to enjoy a candlelit dinner. He considerately helped her cut the steak, poured wine for her, and gazed at her with a gentle and doting smile. All of this was so beautiful that it felt like a dream. In the past, she didn't even dare to imagine that such a day would come. She stared at his handsome face under the candlelight with a dazed expression. Silly, what are you thinking about? Mika Kito stroked her hair behind her ear and smiled. She smiled. I just didn't expect that we would develop to this point. He put down the cutlery and pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry to have made you wait for me for 3 years. 3 years was enough for him to sort out his unrealistic fantasies and start a new relationship. What he had missed was gone forever. He wanted to seize the happiness that belonged to him in this limited life. She wrapped her arms around his waist and leaned her head against his chest. A peaceful smile bloomed on her face. After dinner, she wanted to go home. She was worried about making a scene. However, Mika Kito said that before going home, he wanted to take her to a place. It was a beach very close to the town where she lived. The seaside in winter was already a little cold. The cold wind rustled, and the fishy smell of the sea hit her in the face. Under the dark night sky, a circle of lotus lanterns was lit on the beach in the distance. The lotus lanterns were connected to each other, and hundreds of them formed a large heart-shaped circle. After Mika Kito got out of the car, he opened the door for her and held her hand as they walked towards the bright lights. He held her hand and stepped into the heart-shaped lights. They were surrounded by a circle of lights. Under her surprised gaze, he knelt on one knee on the beach and held her hand tightly. He gazed at her delicate eyes affectionately and said slowly, Lin Wu Yu, Miss Lin, will you marry me? Her eyes were filled with tears, and they were sparkling under the candlelight. She smiled. I will. Although the proposal was late by 3 years, she was very happy. She was really very happy. He smiled and kissed the ring on her ring finger seriously. Then he got up and hugged her tightly in his arms. Wifey, come back to Tokyo with me, okay? She looked up and kissed his smooth chin. Okay. Surprise flashed across his eyes. He lowered his head and kissed her lips, unwilling to let go for a long time. Just as they were kissing, bright fireworks bloomed in the night sky. It was a beautiful sight to behold. On the way home, Suzaku looked at her handsome side profile and couldn't help but laugh. Did you learn all these tricks from The Story of Love? His lips curled up. You heard that? She glared at him. Don't forget that I'm a killer. I have sharp ears and eyes. Although you deliberately lowered your voices, I still heard it clearly. Thank you for not exposing us. Mika Kito chuckled happily. She nodded seriously. You're welcome. Although the tricks are cliché, the effect is passable for the sake of the person who used them. Mika Kito wasn't angry. Instead, the smile in his eyes deepened. To think that an old man like me learned how to woo my wifey. Fortunately, my wifey is satisfied. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to end this. Is there anything you can't handle? She looked at him with a smile. In her eyes, he was a man of indomitable spirit, a godlike existence that could call the wind and summon the rain. She respected him and loved him even more. He chuckled. Not anymore. After she agreed to go back with him, there was nothing that could stop him anymore. The two of them returned home. Now was playing on the sofa with Grandma Kimura's little tabby cat in his arms. Jiang Dao sat beside him to accompany him. The little guy saw his parents appear at the door side by side, and his beautiful big eyes rolled around a few times. He quickly abandoned the little tabby cat, jumped down from the sofa, and threw himself at Vermilion Bird's legs. He pouted and called out softly, "Mommy, where did you go? You left me alone." Jiang Dao saw that their family was reunited and quietly left the living room. Suzaku carried her son and kissed his cheek. "I'm sorry. Mommy had something to do. I won't let you be alone in the future." Now hugged her neck and stared at Mika Kito with his bright eyes. "Mommy, did you go out with strange uncle?" Suzaku pinched his face and smiled. "He's not strange uncle. He's daddy. Now, call daddy." Now blinked and Gigai called, "Daddy." "Good boy." Mika Kito was grinning from ear to ear. She took her son from Suzaku's arms and kissed him hard on the cheek. "Good boy, call me that again. Daddy, daddy. I'll have a daddy in the future too." The little boy excitedly moved his little body in his father's arms and clapped his hands, laughing and playing. His body moved forward and back and he kept playing tricks. Suzaku was frightened and reached out to support his back. Now, be careful. Don't fall." Mika Kito smiled and comforted her. "It's okay. Our son is happy. Let him play. I'll hold him tightly. Nothing will happen. Daddy, you're so awesome." The little boy was full of admiration for his father and clapped his hands. Mika Kito's heart melted and was filled with pride. She kissed her son on the cheek and pulled Suzaku closer to kiss her on the cheek. Suzaku glared at him but did not refuse. The family was happy and harmonious, and laughter intertwined. Suzaku and Now were full of affection for this town. Before leaving, Mika Kito accompanied the mother and son to visit the neighbors and friends who had taken care of them. They gave gifts and expressed their gratitude. At Suzaku's insistence, they also visited Akiko. Mika Kito smiled and shook Akiko's hand, thanking him for taking care of his wife and son. Akiko hid his feelings for Suzaku in the bottom of his heart and generously gave them his blessings. In the end, with the blessings of the town's residents, they reluctantly drove away from this place and returned to Tokyo. Mika Kito insisted on holding a make-up wedding. He wanted this wedding to be even grander than the one 3 years ago. Xiaodong's family of 6 flew over from China. The old Tomac also came, and he brought a mysterious guest. Mika Kito saw the mysterious guest and hugged him excitedly. She patted his back heavily. "Holly, long time no see." Holly raised his eyebrows and smiled carelessly. "Shin, you're hugging me so tightly. Aren't you afraid that the bride will misunderstand?" "Damn you. After so many years, you still have a glib tongue." Mika Kito pushed him away and punched his chest with a smile. "Why didn't you tell me in advance that you were coming out?" "Of course it was to give you a surprise. You see, I love you so much." Holly smiled ambiguously. He was released half a year early because of his good behavior in prison. After he attended the wedding and returned to Rome, Tomac would hand over the Anya family to him. Mika Kito teased, "Unfortunately, you confessed too late. I already have a wife." Xiaodong shrugged his shoulders impatiently. "That's enough, you guys. I'm getting goosebumps." "Ha!" Everyone burst into laughter. Miyamoto Hanzo appeared out of nowhere, his goatee curling up. "Hurry up, it's almost time. Shin, hurry up and welcome the bride." Hiroshi Kitato had his hands in his trouser pockets, and a pure and beautiful girl was holding his arm. The two of them were like a golden boy and jade girl. They were a perfect match and even spoke with tacit understanding. They said in unison, "Uncle Hanzo, run slower. Don't fall." After the two of them finished speaking, they smiled at each other and made cute faces at each other. They were so sweet to the bone. Miyamoto Hanzo pretended to be angry and glared at the two of them. "Boy Yuan, girl Xianyu, listen carefully. I'm still young. How can I fall?" The girl called Xianyu was a Yuan's girlfriend. She wrinkled her little nose and stuck out her tongue at Miyamoto Hanzo. "Uncle, don't be angry. We're just joking." Yuan rubbed Xianyu's hair and said with a smile, "Xiaoyu, let's ignore Uncle Hanzo and go with Big Brother to pick up sister-in-law." Let's go pick up sister-in-law. Holly followed suit. Let's go. Let's join in the fun. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A large group of people ran away, leaving Miyamoto Hanzo and a group of child soldiers staring at each other. The old man was so sad. The leader of the child soldiers, Xiao Yi, coughed and comforted him seriously. Grandpa Hanzo, don't be sad. They really didn't mean to ignore you. Sob, sob. Being comforted like this makes the old man even sadder. Grandpa, don't cry. Hai will help you cry. The little princess of the Bailey family, Hai, ran to his side and hugged his legs affectionately. She coaxed him as if he was a small animal. Miyamoto Hanzo immediately beamed with joy. The little princess is still the most considerate. Don't snatch my grandpa. This is my family. The little devil of the Beitang family, now, rushed over with his hands on his hips. He glared at Miss, who was a few years older than him, with dissatisfaction. In just a short month he had been spoiled by the Yamaguchi-gumi. They liked to label everything with the words, my family. My mommy, my daddy, my doggy. Hai also had her hands on her hips. She lowered her head and looked at the little guy who was half a head shorter than her. She snorted in disdain. Petty. You're not gentlemanly at all. Now's little face flushed red. You're so fierce. You're not cute at all. Say that again. Not cute at all. Wah, I'm so angry. Do you want to fight? I'm a man. I won't fight with you. The two children glared at each other angrily. Miyamoto Hanzo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao were watching the show from the side. They weren't worried about their little princess. The little princess had already learned self-defense from Xiao Guai. If they really fought, Now would definitely be beaten up by her. Ahem, they weren't worried about Now either. Although Hai was very fierce, she was actually very soft-hearted and wouldn't really beat Now. A melodious wedding march sounded. Xiao Guai quickly ran between the two little guys and said, "Stop fighting. Look, the bride and groom are here." Everyone quietened down as they cast their gazes at the couple who slowly entered with the music. They were dressed in white wedding gowns and white gowns. They looked holy and perfect like gods as they stared at each other with deep affection. They had knowing smiles on their faces as the sun shone on them, writing a love that would last until the end of time. Come and see. Song Shu 566. Chapter 386. The plane landed in New York, USA. Here, the sun had just risen and it was the beginning of a beautiful day. The sun shone through the huge glass wall and shone on the people walking slowly through the safety passage. Among them, there was a tall man who was particularly eye-catching. He was wearing expensive casual clothes, which outlined his tall and handsome figure. His fine black hair covered his smooth forehead and a pair of brown sunglasses rested on his straight nose. His thin lips were slightly pursed and his chin was as sharp as a knife. He exuded a lazy and leisurely aura. He stopped and took off his sunglasses with his slender fingers. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes were slightly raised as he looked around. His face was so beautiful that it took one's breath away. President, a blond handsome foreign man waved at the man. Bailey Yun's lips curled up slightly as he dragged his suitcase towards his assistant, Kelly, who had come to greet him. President, thank you for your hard work. Kelly took the suitcase from him and said respectfully, the driver is already waiting outside the airport. Outside the airport, a silver Porsche had been waiting for a long time. Kelly opened the car door and bent over, one hand guarding the door and the other making an inviting gesture. Bailey Yun sat in the car and leaned comfortably against the soft seat. He took off his sunglasses and brushed his black hair that was slightly covering his eyes. There was a hint of melancholy in his charming almond-shaped eyes. Li Duobao, this bad girl, was still hiding from him. When he had just gotten off the plane, he had called her again, but her phone was still turned off. Bailey Yun's slender fingers tapped on the leather seat. He collected his thoughts and looked at Kelly. Is there anything important going on in the company recently? Vice President, we have negotiated a cooperation with Genesis High-Tech Software. This is the draft agreement. Kelly handed a contract to him. Bailey Yun's eyes narrowed as he carefully read the document in his hand. If this cooperation was successful, he would be able to enter the China market faster. On the other side, Li Duobao was awakened by the dazzling sunlight. She rubbed her messy hair and sat up from the bed. Wrapped in the quilt, she lazily stared at the furnishings in the room. She used 2 seconds to wake herself up. She patted her cheeks and told herself that she was in a hotel, in America. God, after working overtime for days, she couldn't even tell where she was. She glanced at the bedside clock. It was already past 9 o'clock. She stretched lazily and wore the plaid bear pajamas to wash up in the bathroom. After tidying up, she turned on her phone. Dozens of messages and missed calls poured out. The names showed that they were all from one person, Bailey Yun. Li Duobao couldn't help but think of his confession that day, and her heart started to beat faster again. She bit her lip and opened the message he sent. Li Duobao, why are you avoiding me? Li Duobao, don't ignore me, Li Duobao of Li Duobao. Li Duobao, you despicable woman. I'm going back to America. Will you die if you talk to me? Li Duobao, where are you? I'm worried to death. Li Duobao, I'm worried about you. Tell me, are you doing well now? Li Duobao, I'm leaving. I won't give up. I'll keep chasing you until you agree to me. The last message he wrote was, Li Duobao, I like you. I like you very much. Li Duobao looked at these messages in a daze. His anger, his helplessness, his anxiety, and his deep feelings were all conveyed to her through these short messages. She couldn't help but think of the time she spent with him. Although it wasn't long, it was full of laughter and sweetness. She hesitated for a long time. Her slender fingers rubbed the phone screen. In the end, she clicked on a reply. I'm in New York. I'm fine. In less than 2 seconds after the message was sent, he called her. He sounded anxious. Li Duobao, why are you avoiding me these days? She bit her lip. I'm not avoiding you. I'm very busy at work. Bailey Yun's tone sank. Why didn't you pick up my call? She muttered softly, I'm used to switching off my phone at work. He seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. His tone suddenly rose, and he was overflowing with excitement. So you're not avoiding me on purpose? Li Duobao mumbled, Actually, it was a little intentional. However, it was really just a little. She just didn't know how to face him. Bailey Yun took it as her acquiescence and was elated. Where are you? I'll come over to see you now. She scratched the sofa with her fingers and said softly, It's not necessary. I'm going back tomorrow. Then all the more we have to meet. Tell me the address quickly. Bailey Yun was like an emperor, giving orders. No, Li Duobao, are you deliberately making me angry? Tell me quickly. I want to see you immediately. She puffed her cheeks. I'm not ready to see you yet, bad girl. Do you know how much I've missed you these few days? If you don't tell me, I'll call your airline. You have so many colleagues. There must be someone who knows where you are. Li Duobao took it seriously and said, No. I'll tell you. I'm at the Hilton Hotel. She didn't want everyone to know about this. Be good. Don't hang up first. On the other end of the phone, Bailey Yun chuckled. He then instructed the chauffeur and put the phone to his ear. What are you doing now? Li Duobao touched her nose, and there was a touch of shyness on her face. I just woke up. His tone was gentle. Have you not eaten breakfast yet? She replied with an Are you hungry? I'm not very hungry yet. Then wait for me for another 20 minutes. Let's have breakfast together. Shi Gigai replied with an Oh. Her voice was so soft that it fell on Bailey Yun's heart like cotton candy. His narrow foxy eyes were filled with smiles. Wear more clothes. It's a little cold outside. Got it. His voice was so gentle that it could drip water. She blushed even more. She bit her lips and lied uncomfortably. I'll hang up first. I have to call my mother to tell her that I'm safe. Although he was a little reluctant, he still let her hang up the phone. He played with his phone in his hand and urged the chauffeur, Drive faster. Li Duobao patted her cheeks in front of the mirror and slowly exhaled. She was so annoyed. She didn't know how to face Bai Liyun. Her delicate eyebrows furrowed. She thought that she should properly sort out her feelings for him. She changed into a white sweater, a red checkered skirt, lambskin boots, a woolen coat, and a fluffy hat on her head. When Bai Liyun's car stopped outside the hotel, he saw Li Duobao standing upright with her hands in her coat pockets. She lowered her head slightly and stared at her toes. Her black satin hair was draped over her chest, and she was as obedient as a cute little white rabbit. He smiled brightly and jogged in front of her. He reached out and knocked on her head. He chuckled and said, "Hey, come back to your senses. What are you thinking about?" Li Duobao looked up at him, a pure smile blooming on her round apple face. Her big watery eyes moved. "Bai Liyun, I'm hungry." Bai Liyun smiled brightly and patted her head. "Let's go. I'll take you to eat something delicious." She put her hands behind her back like a little old man and followed behind him with her head lowered. He took her to a very cozy restaurant. She drank the fragrant milk in small sips. Her stomach and body warmed up. He sat quietly opposite her with a doting smile on his face. He drank black coffee, completely ignoring the adoring gazes of the women around him. Bai Liyun had already eaten breakfast on the plane, but in order to accompany her, he ordered a fried egg and ham. He slowly ate the fried egg on the plate. "What time are you going back tomorrow?" Li Duobao wiped the corner of her lips with a tissue. "Tomorrow morning." "What are your plans today?" She shook her head. "I plan to rest in the hotel for the day." His beautiful foxy eyes blinked and the corners of his lips curled up. "It's boring to stay in the hotel. I'll take you around New York City." She smiled embarrassedly. "You just came back. You must have a lot of things to do. I won't trouble you." He threw her a flirtatious look. "Why are you being so polite with me? Those things will be dealt with tomorrow. It's more important to accompany you." Li Duobao smiled awkwardly. "Well, there's really no need." Bai Liyun gradually retracted his smile. His deep eyes stared at her porcelain white and lustrous little face. "Did I trouble you?" His tone was a little bleak, and there was a faint loneliness in his eyes. She actually felt her heart ache and hurriedly explained, "No, I just haven't thought of how to respond to you. So, can you give me some time?" Bai Liyun held her soft hand and smiled. "Duobao, you didn't reject me immediately. Does that mean I still have a chance?" Li Duobao blushed and tried to pull her hand away. He held it very tightly and she didn't pull it away. Her voice was like a mosquito's buzzing. "I like you a little too." Bai Liyun's long and narrow eyes suddenly shook and a trace of surprise flashed past quickly. He held her hand even tighter. "If that's the case, what are you still hesitating for?" Her face was so red that it was about to bleed. She bit her lips and lowered her head, not daring to look into his eyes. "You used to have many girlfriends. I don't know how long your feelings for me can last. I just want to marry an honest man, a man who can love me for the rest of my life. Do you understand what I mean?" At that moment, Bai Liyun's heart felt as if it had been pricked by a needle. It was a sharp pain. There was a price to pay for being young and frivolous. When he was fighting with Suzuki Chisakura for Xiaobao's custody, he already understood this principle. At this moment, Li Duobao's distrust of him made him feel the pain of eating his own medicine once again. He was silent for a long time, so long that it made Li Duobao's heart ache. She hurriedly looked up. "Bai Liyun, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." Awesome novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 387. Bai Liyun smiled bitterly. "No matter what happened in the past can't be changed. It's only right that you can't trust me. I'm also full of guilt about my past. I'll definitely wait until the moment you're willing to accept me." He held her hand tightly. "Duobao, I'll let you understand that my feelings for you are sincere. If I had known that I would meet you, I would have kept my chastity for you." The words, "keep your chastity," might be an exaggeration, but it deeply hit Li Duobao's heart. Her heart trembled. In his eyes, she saw determination and affection. "However, you once said that men were the best at lying." Li Duobao thought for a moment and said, "I still can't give you an answer immediately. Bai Liyun, let's start as friends, okay?" She raised her small face, her eyes as clear as crystals. Bailey Yun let go of her hand and smiled. Okay, I said that I'll give you time until you accept me. The corners of her lips curled up high, and her face was filled with a bright smile. She clasped her hands together with an expectant expression. Then what are we going to do today? You said just now that you're going to take me out for a walk. Bailey Yun chuckled. This girl's thoughts jumped really quickly. However, she didn't want him to accompany her just now, but now she changed her mind. It could be considered an improvement. His pair of beautiful foxy eyes curved, and he used his finger to poke her perky little nose. He said dotingly, I know you like to play, so I'm playing with you today. You can go anywhere you want. I don't know where to go. I'm not familiar with this place at all. Li Duobao frowned in distress. Bailey Yun raised his eyebrows and smiled. Then come with me. There's a cosplay comic today. Really? That's great, I like it the most. Then let's go quickly. Otherwise, there will be too many people and we won't be able to squeeze into the exhibition hall. Li Duobao's eyes lit up, and her face was filled with excitement. Bailey Yun's lips curled up, and he was in a good mood. Through this period of time together, Bailey Yun had already understood her personality. She was naive and cheerful, and her personality was like a child's. The things she liked were more childish, such as amusement parks, horror cities, anime, and so on. As for the shopping and beauty that other girls liked, she was uninterested. Therefore, after understanding her personality, it wasn't difficult to cater to her interests. On the way to meet Li Duobao, Bailey Yun had already checked the news. After finding out that there was a Comic-Con, he found a way to contact with the organizer to obtain a certain amount of preferential treatment. For example, they did not need to line up and could directly enter the exhibition hall through the VIP channel. The scene of the expo was very grand. Not only was it a carnival for anime fans, but it was also a platform for the anime industry from all over the world to display and communicate with each other. The world's top cosplay teams and cosplay experts were gathered here, as well as internationally renowned anime artists, scriptwriters, directors, voice actors, and so on. The exciting and explosive scene ignited the enthusiasm of anime fans and shocked their visual nerves. It was Li Duobao's first time attending such a grand Comic-Con. She screamed excitedly with the crowd around her, shouting for her favorite anime characters and manga artists. Her round face was full of smiles, and she was in high spirits. Her passionate appearance was like a bright ray of sunlight stored in Bailey Yun's heart, making him reluctant to let her go. There were many people at the scene. Bailey Yun was worried that she would be squeezed by others, so he stayed by her side to protect her. He used his arms and chest to draw a protective circle for her, allowing her to be wholeheartedly immersed in her happiness. Bailey Yun, look, cosplay Pirates of the Caribbean, Captain Jack is really like it. It's super stylish. Li Duobao didn't realize that she was in someone's arms at all. She excitedly tugged at someone's arm and pointed at the pirate captain in the cosplay group. Her eyes were full of red hearts. Bailey Yun was jealous, and it was very serious. He looked critically at the cosplayer on the stage. The iconic loose pleated shirt, pirate headband, exaggerated accessories, velvet jacket, and skull badge. The gorgeous mix revealed a strong sense of wildness and rebellion, especially the pair of deep eyes. They were unruly and arrogant, very similar to the characters in the original work. He snorted disdainfully. The cosplayer's figure wasn't as good as his. If he went on stage, the effect would be better. Bailey Yun glanced at Li Duobao with dissatisfaction. Her hands were clasped together and her eyes were full of red hearts. The jealousy in his heart grew stronger. He put his arm around her shoulder and dragged her out of the exhibition area. What are you doing? I haven't seen enough. Li Duobao waved her arms and struggled. Let's go over there. Don't you like horror movies? There's a Silent Hill cosplay over there. Bailey Yun squinted his foxy eyes and showed a charming smile, tempting someone. Really? Let's go, let's go. Li Duobao's eyes suddenly widened, and she was full of energy. Instead, she pulled his arm and rushed forward. After a few steps, she suddenly stopped and turned her head. She missed someone's triumphant smile. She was confused. Bailey Yun, aren't you afraid of ghosts? Won't you be afraid of cosplay? No. Bailey Yun was in a good mood. He rubbed her hair. He didn't expect this girl to still remember him at this time. Really, won't you be afraid? Silent Hill is very scary. Li Duobao confirmed with him seriously. Really, I won't be afraid with you by my side. Let's go. Bailey Yun smiled warmly. He held her hand and walked through the crowd to another exhibition area. Li Duobao tilted his head and looked at his handsome side profile. A smile bloomed on his lips. Bailey Yun, thank you. I'm very happy today. Bailey Yun turned his head and winked at her. As long as you're happy. Look, don't we look like we're on a date now? She mumbled, if you say so, then so be it. He blinked his eyes and moved his handsome face closer to her. What did you say? I didn't hear you clearly. She was shocked when his face suddenly enlarged in front of her. She reached out to cover his face and pushed it back gently. It's fine if you didn't hear me. I didn't say anything. Little rascal, you just said it. Don't you want to admit it so soon? He allowed her soft little hand to rest on his face as he spoke with a light smile. As his lips opened and closed, the moment his lips touched her palm, a wave of numbness suddenly rippled out from the place where he touched her. Li Duobao hurriedly retracted her hand like a child who had done something wrong. She looked around frantically and refused to look at him. The girl was so shy that Bai Liyun didn't want to push her too hard. He didn't want her to hide herself like an ostrich. He grabbed her hand as if nothing had happened and changed the topic with a smile. Duobao, what's your favorite anime character? Li Duobao said without hesitation, Crayon Shin-chan. Bailey Yun coughed. Let's change it. A man. An adult. She chuckled. Tuho Shirsi, a character from the anime Silver Soul. Looking at this girl's shy appearance, Bai Liyun's heart was filled with jealousy. Well, it was Tsukada Shirsi. While she was watching the cosplay show with great interest, he quietly took out his mobile phone and searched for him on Baidu. It turned out that he was a hot-tempered and cold person, but he was upright and very popular with women. Bailey Yun secretly remembered it and pressed Li Duobao's head gently. Duobao, who's your favorite female anime character? Li Duobao's eyes were fixed on the performance on stage. She took the time to answer him. Kagura-chan. What's Kagura-chan? Bailey Yun continued to Baidu secretly. Oh, so she's also a character from Silver Soul. She's a lowly wearing a China-style red cheongsam. She looks innocent and cute, but she's actually very strong. She also has a very strong stomach. When she's hungry, she can swallow a cow. She's definitely talking about her. Bailey Yun raised his foxy eyes slightly, and his lips curled into a smug smile. He seemed to be thinking of something. Ladies and gentlemen, please be quiet. After the performance, the host appeared with a microphone. Today, in order to thank everyone for coming, we have specially prepared a small program. We will select a man and a woman from the audience as guests. The selected guests will have the honor of experiencing the real-life cosplay provided by us for free. No matter which anime or movie character you want to cosplay as, we can fulfill your wish. Now, please raise your right hand and let me see your desire. Wow, that's great. I want to participate. Choose me, please, you must choose me. Everyone in the venue was excited. Li Duobao's blood was boiling, and her face was glowing with a different kind of expression. She hugged Bai Liyun's arm and cheered, "This is so fun. I want to participate too." Bailey Yun's lips curled. But there are so many people. I might not be chosen. Li Duobao looked around. There was a sea of people, and everyone was raising their arms high and shouting, "Choose me." She was immediately discouraged. Bailey Yun smiled brightly. You'll definitely be chosen. Believe me, I'm a prophet. She stuck out her tongue playfully. I won't believe your prophecy. I'll let you see that my prophecy is correct. Bailey Yun grabbed her right hand and raised it high in the air. The host exclaimed, Wow, so there are so many people who want to try. Unfortunately, we only have 2 spots. Who are these 2 lucky fellows? Here, Many people couldn't hold back and shook their right hand hard. The host shrugged. I really want to give the enthusiastic friends over there a chance. Unfortunately, the decision is not in my hands. Let's welcome the organizer's person in charge, Mr. John. Ad. Hongcha 866. Chapter 388. A man in his 40s slowly walked onto the stage and exchanged a few words. His gaze slowly scanned the venue. Every time his gaze swept over a direction, it would cause an excited scream. Li Duobao's heart also jumped. Her heart was thumping, and her beautiful big eyes were fixed on John. She didn't notice that Bailey Yun and John had a brief exchange of glances. John smiled and finally his gaze fell on Bailey Yun and Li Duobao. He extended his right hand in their direction. Let's invite Miss and her boyfriend, who are wearing a coat and a white hat, onto the stage. Li Duobao looked in the direction John extended his hand and quickly looked around. She saw that the people around her were staring at her and Bailey Yun with envy. Only then did she believe that there was nothing wrong with her ears. They were really lucky to be chosen. She was immersed in great joy and even ignored the way Mr. John addressed Bailey Yun, her boyfriend. Miss, please come on stage with your boyfriend, the host said with a kind smile. Only then did Li Duobao notice how they addressed her. Her cheeks were burning, and she glanced at Bailey Yun in embarrassment. Bailey Yun smiled comfortingly, held her hand and whispered, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." She wasn't afraid. She was just a little shy. The audience automatically parted to make a path. Bailey Yun held Li Duobao's hand with a calm smile on his face and slowly walked onto the stage. The host smiled and said, "Miss, may I know your surname? I'm lucky to be selected as a guest. Do you have anything you want to say?" Bailey Yun glanced at Li Duobao. He thought she would have stage fright. He was prepared to be a hero and save the damsel in distress. He didn't expect her to be as calm as she was on the plane. Her cheeks were still flushed, but her expression was calm. She held the microphone in her hand and smiled cutely. "My name is Li Duobao. I'm a Chinese. I'm a fan of anime. I'm very grateful to Mr. John for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. Sir, as Miss Li's boyfriend, what do you think of her hobbies?" The host raised the microphone in front of Bailey Yun. Raising his brows, Bailey Yun humorously replied, "Thank you for your recognition. Actually, I'm not Duobao's boyfriend yet, but I'm working towards that identity. There's an idiom in China called, 'Love the house, love the crow.' It means that if you love someone, you have to love the crow on her roof as well. I even love the crow on her roof, let alone her interests and hobbies." There were many Chinese in the audience. When they heard his teasing confession, they all cheered and applauded for him. Some people even whistled and shouted in Chinese, "Together, together." Bailey Yun confessed in front of so many people. Li Duobao was so embarrassed that his face turned red, but his heart was as sweet as honey. Although the host didn't understand Chinese, he roughly understood what the audience meant. He humorously teased, "Miss Li is so beautiful, so the crow on her roof must be beautiful as well. I wish the two of you a happy ending." "Thank you." Bailey Yun politely shook hands with the host. "You're welcome. Now, let's invite the two of you to the backstage to get your makeup done." The staff led Bailey Yun and Li Duobao to the backstage dressing room. There were many dressing rooms here, and the names of the countries were pasted on the door. The staff led them to the dressing room of the Japanese cosplay team. Stepping into the dressing room, Li Duobao was so happy that she almost fainted. She saw many famous cosplayers, and they were all wearing costumes from anime characters. They were sitting in front of the dressing mirror and putting on their makeup. There were several rows of cosplay costumes in the room, and there were all kinds of styles. The leader was a very handsome man, and he was also a famous cosplayer. He was very enthusiastic towards Bailey Yun and Li Duobao. He asked the female assistant to lead Li Duobao to the girls' dressing room, and he personally led Bailey Yun to the men's dressing room. The leader's slender fingers supported his chin as he smiled. "Mr. Bailey, who do you want to cosplay as?" "I personally suggest that you cosplay as Sha Shengmer. Your temperament is closer to him." Bailey Yun sat in front of the dressing mirror and looked at the leader through the mirror. He smiled. Thank you for your suggestion, but I already have a target. More than an hour later, after the makeup artist's meticulous work, Bai Liyun's style was completed. The leader looked at him carefully and his face was full of surprise. Mr. Bai Liyun, if you want to join our team, we will welcome you very much. The corners of Bai Liyun's lips curled up. I appreciate your good intentions. So, my current appearance is considered very successful? Of course, it's very successful. This is the best cosplay of this character that I have ever seen. The leader did not hide his admiration for him. Bailey Yun smiled happily and touched his thin chin. With his current appearance, he should be able to charm that little girl. The sound of footsteps could be heard, and Li Duobao, who had finished cosplaying, appeared. Bailey Yun slowly turned around, wanting to give a certain someone a surprise. In the end, before the other party could be surprised, he was the first to be shocked. His eyes widened slightly as he looked at Li Duobao, who was standing not far away. She was wearing a white and black striped uniform and a pair of riding boots. Her hair was short, and her thin bangs slightly covered her slightly blood-red eyes. Under the hairstyle, her nose was high, and her chin looked sharp. When she smiled, the sharp teeth in her mouth were revealed. If he guessed correctly, she should be cosplaying as a vampire, and it was a man. No, Bailey Yun comforted himself. Perhaps it was just a man who looked like Li Duobao. However, the man, who looked like Li Duobao, shattered his fantasy. She had a surprised smile on her face as she jogged in front of him. It's Jushru Kikata. Bailey Yun, you actually cosplayed as Jushru Kikata. That's great. Bailey Yun was wearing a black Japanese-style bathrobe. The collar was slightly open, revealing his delicate collarbone and a little bit of his chest. His hairstyle was exactly the same as Jushru Kikata in the anime. In order to portray his smoking characteristics, Bailey Yun's slender fingers held an electronic cigarette. His eyes were deep, as if he was thinking about an important life question. Bailey Yun's mouth twitched. Didn't you say that you liked Kagura? Why did you cosplay as a man? Li Duobao chuckled. Kagura is only 13 or 14 years old. If I cosplayed as her age, it wouldn't be suitable. Actually, I always wanted to cosplay as a vampire, so I cosplayed as a vampire knight. Isn't it handsome? Bai Liyun silently cried in his heart. Handsome, very handsome. The feeling of her pretending to be a man was actually quite good. However, he wanted to stand together with her as a man and a woman, not as two men. Ah, bastard. Li Duobao didn't understand the pain and struggle in Bailey Yun's heart at all. She nervously and embarrassedly twisted her fingers. Bailey Yun, can I hug you? Bailey Yun was ecstatic, and the knot in his heart was swept away. However, her next sentence made him feel that his life was bleak again. I really like Jushru Kikata. You cosplay as if a two-dimensional character came to life in the third dimension. She blinked her wet eyes and said pitifully, So, can you let me hug you? Bai Liyun was about to suffer internal injuries. Why was it that when he, a handsome and confident man, stood in front of her, she had never been infatuated with him? When he dressed up as a two-dimensional character, he was able to easily capture her heart. However, seeing that she was hugging his body, Bailey Yun felt a little more comfortable in his heart. He generously opened his arms and said, Come. Thus, the vampire knight happily threw herself into Jushru Kikata's arms. If one didn't look carefully, it would be two men hugging each other affectionately. This scene was seen by everyone in the dressing room. Some people kindly jeered, some people found it funny and whistled, and some people quickly took photos of this gay scene with their phones. Sorry to disturb you. The host's assistant knocked on the door of the dressing room and walked in. His eyes rolled twice on the hugging men, and finally landed on the head. He asked in surprise, Head, Mr. Bailey and Miss Lee, are they not ready yet? The head laughed out loud and pointed at the men. They are ready. The assistant was so shocked that his eyeballs almost fell out. Li Duobao raised her head from Bailey Yun's arms, raised her hand and laughed. I am Li Duobao. If the two of you are ready, please follow me to the front desk. The assistant coughed. He thought that it was two men, but it turned out that he misunderstood. Under the introduction of the host, the two of them made a grand entrance. What greeted them was the screams of the anime fans. Obviously, their cosplay exceeded the expectations of the anime fans. Bailey Yun wore a black bathrobe and wooden clogs on his feet, revealing a part of his calves. His exquisite and perfect facial features had a cold and elegant seduction. He had half a cigarette in his mouth and his eyes were slightly downcast. When everyone's eyes fell on him, he suddenly raised his eyes and stared fiercely at them. He arrogantly shouted, "I am the deputy head of the truth group, Jushuru Kikata." The anime fans screamed wildly and were so excited that they almost fainted. There was only one voice in the entire venue like thunder. "Jushuru Kikata! Jushuru Kikata! I love you!" When Li Duobao came on stage, her role as a vampire knight also attracted crazy cheers. As a stewardess, she was tall to begin with. Coupled with the effect of the stylist's uncanny workmanship, almost no one would suspect that she was a woman just by looking at her appearance. She hid the signature sweet smile on her face and showed her cold and taciturn side. The loneliness and sadness in her eyes broke the hearts of many women. Someone in the audience shouted, "Jolan Shu-sama and Jushuru Kikata kiss, please applaud." The applause was like thunder and the audience shouted, "Kiss, kiss." Beauty novel, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 389. Li Duobao almost couldn't maintain the indifference on her face. She was so embarrassed that she just wanted to find a hole to hide in. Bailey Yun reached out and hugged her shoulder. He shouted arrogantly, "You bastards, how dare you bully my woman? All of you, go and commit seppuku." Seppuku was a classic line of Jushuru Okada. The venue was once again in an uproar. At that moment, Li Duobao's heart raced. She looked up at his handsome side profile and had an indescribable feeling in her heart. She had an impulse to jump into his arms. At that moment, she didn't want to hug Jushuru Okada, but Bailey Yun himself. The event was finally over. Li Duobao heaved a sigh of relief. She shamelessly asked Bailey Yun to take many photos for her as a souvenir. She also called a staff member and asked him to take a few photos of her and Bailey Yun. She flipped through the photos saved in her phone and laughed foolishly. Bailey Yun leaned in front of her, raised his foxy eyes, and smiled slyly. "Am I very handsome?" Li Duobao only stared at the photos and didn't look at him at all. "I'm looking at Jushuru Okada. He's so handsome." Bailey Yun was very sad. But what was so good about that grumpy two-dimensional man? He really wanted to find a place to lick his fur and heal his wounds. Li Duobao stole a glance at a certain someone who seemed to have suffered a terrible blow. She covered her mouth and laughed secretly. After the two of them changed their clothes and removed their makeup, Li Duobao went to the bathroom. When she came out of the bathroom, Li Duobao didn't see Bailey Yun. She thought that maybe he was waiting for her in the hall. When she passed by the corridor, she saw two figures leaning against the railing. One of them was Bailey Yun, whom she was very familiar with. The other person could only be seen from the back, so she didn't know who it was. They were talking, so she didn't want to disturb them. She planned to stay where she was and wait for them to finish talking before going up. However, they were too close. Their conversation still drifted into her ears clearly. Bailey Yun said, "Mr. John, thank you for everything you've done for me." John laughed heartily. "You're welcome. It's our honor that you and Miss Lee are satisfied." Bailey Yun smiled and shook hands with him. "I wish us a pleasant cooperation. I look forward to working with you." The two exchanged a few more pleasantries and ended the conversation. John left in another direction. Li Duobao watched his back disappear into the distance before walking towards Bailey Yun. Bailey Yun heard footsteps and turned around with a warm smile on his face. "It's time for dinner. What do you want to eat?" Li Duobao stared at him with his big black eyes. "You know Mr. John? He was the one who arranged for us to be guests, right?" Bailey Yun rubbed his nose. "You heard everything?" Li Duobao nodded. "Did you guys make some kind of deal? Otherwise, why would he help us?" "Fool, don't overcomplicate things. Bailey Yun smiled dotingly. He and I are old friends. I asked him to arrange for us to cosplay, and he readily agreed. Li Duobao looked at him suspiciously. I clearly heard you guys say a pleasant cooperation. John actually runs an anime magazine. I plan to talk to him about the game adaptation rights for anime. Bailey Yun actually lied. They weren't old friends, but he used the game adaptation as a topic to negotiate with John. Oh, so that's how it is. Li Duobao blinked. Bai Li Yun ruffled her hair, his face full of helplessness. Aren't you focusing on the wrong thing? I've spent so much effort, shouldn't you be touched? Even if you don't faint, you should at least cry a little. Li Duobao burst out laughing. Bailey Yun felt like he was being mocked. He rubbed his nose with his face covered in dirt, and tears flowed silently to his heart. Sai, who asked him to like a little woman who was lacking in her brain. Seeing him hurt like a cute little fox, Li Duobao covered her mouth and continued to laugh. He helplessly pressed her head. Let's go and have dinner. She suddenly threw herself into his arms, her soft body leaning against his chest. She wrapped her arms around his waist and said softly, "Let me hug you." Bailey Yun looked at the little woman who was burying her head in his arms like an ostrich. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I haven't hugged you enough. Jushur Dokata has already returned to the 2D world. She said in a muffled voice, I know. I'm hugging Bailey Yun now. Bailey Yun's face immediately brightened. He couldn't wait to sing a song. He unceremoniously wrapped his arms around her slender waist and smiled happily. Please don't stand on ceremony. You can hug me as long as you want. Go to hell. Don't take advantage of me. Li Duobao pushed his chest and said with her cheeks puffed up, I've hugged you enough. Let go of me. Unreasonable little baddie. Although he muttered unhappily, Bailey Yun still let go of her gigai. Li Duobao snickered. Bailey Yun drove her to a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown for dinner. Then, he took her to see the night scenery for a while before sending her back to the hotel. He sent her all the way to the door of her room. Li Duobao took out the room card from her handbag and opened the door. After hesitating for a moment, she said, Do you want to come in and sit for a while? Bailey Yun said in all seriousness, It's already very late. It might not be convenient for me to go in. You should rest early. Shigigai replied with an, Oh, and waved her little paw. Then be careful on the way. I'll go in first. Bailey Yun nodded. The room door closed. She actually closed the door in front of him. Bailey Yun angrily patted his cheek. You're asking for it. Why did you say it was inconvenient? Just go in and sit for a while. He stood at the door dejectedly for a while. Then he sighed and turned around, intending to leave. Unexpectedly, the door suddenly opened. He quickly turned around and saw Li Duobao standing at the door uneasily. Her face was abnormally red, and her hands were nervously wringing her fingers. Bailey Yun coughed and said, What's wrong? Li Duobao bit her lip and quickly said, I'll contact you the next time I come to New York. Goodbye. With a bang, the door was forcefully closed. Bailey Yun stood there in a daze. His smart brain seemed to have turned into a block of wood. After a few minutes, he finally understood what she meant. He beamed, and the corners of his mouth reached his ears. He excitedly patted the door and shouted, Duobao, when you return to China, you must miss me. I'll always miss you too. When you're not at work, you're not allowed to turn off your phone, you're not allowed to reject my calls, and you're not allowed to not reply to my messages. In the room, Li Duobao's back was leaning against the door. When he knocked on the door, the vibration was transmitted to her body. It was as if he was right beside her. Listening to his long-winded exhortations, she didn't feel annoyed at all. She cupped her burning cheeks with both hands and chuckled. Duobao, I'm leaving. Have a good rest tonight. Good night. The sound of knocking on the door finally stopped, and the conversation on the other side of the door also stopped. Bai Li Yun muttered in a low voice, I really hope that girl will suddenly jump out and give me another hug. Unfortunately, Li Duobao didn't fulfill his wish this time. However, she softly replied, Good night. Unfortunately, he didn't hear it. It was quiet outside the door. Li Duobao opened the door and took a look. The corridor was empty. Bailey Yun had finally left. She stood there with a pout, feeling a little disappointed. Bailey Yun stood at the end of the corridor and quietly poked his head out. When he saw the little woman standing at the door in a daze, the corners of his lips curled up. He suppressed the urge to run back and hug her. He hid behind the wall until she returned to the room and locked the door. "Oh, you've fallen quite deeply," Bailey Yun muttered in a low voice as he raised his hand and patted his forehead. For Bailey Yun, there were two things that were the most torturous. One was seeing Xiaobao once a month. Sometimes, he missed her so much that he couldn't sleep. The second was his long-distance relationship with Li Duobao. She would stay in New York for 2 days almost every half a month. When she wasn't in New York, or when there was no way to contact her while on a flight mission, it was a kind of torture for Bailey Yun. There was only one way to relieve the pain of lovesickness, and that was to work hard and enter the China market as soon as possible. When the time came, he would stay in City A and marry Li Duobao. His wife and son would warm the bed. Everything would be perfect. Bailey Yun touched his chin and planned for the future. He worked even harder. Japan. Matsuda Industrial Group CEO's office. Suzuki Chisakura sat in the office chair. There was no expression on her delicate and beautiful face. Her eyes stared coldly at the two men in suits who were bent over the desk. The stagnant atmosphere was suffocating. "Pa!" She suddenly slammed the desk and said coldly, "Why didn't you tell me about this earlier?" The two men bent even lower. One of them replied, "When we found out about this, you had already ordered to withdraw the surveillance on Bailey Yun and his family. We thought it wasn't important, so we didn't report it immediately." ****. Suzuki Chisakura's phoenix eyes turned cold. She exuded a vicious aura. "Your mission is to report everything you find out to me, not to judge for me what's important and what's not. If you can't even do this, what's the point of me keeping you?" If she had known that Bailey Yun was in contact with Li Duobao, and if she had known that Bailey Yun cared about Li Duobao, she could have used Li Duobao to threaten him. Perhaps she would have won the battle for Xiaobao's custody. "We're very sorry. We won't do it again." The two men bowed deeply. The man who replied earlier said, "Madam, please give us another chance. We won't let you down." Suzuki Chisakura's breathing steadied. She raised her hand to tuck her hair. A vicious look flashed across her eyes. She said indifferently, "Okay, I can give you another chance. I hate that woman called Li Duobao. Teach her a lesson." Shinwoo 799. Chapter 390. The two of them answered in unison, "Yes." Suzuki Chien Sakura's eyes flickered as she continued, "Didn't you say that she's flying to New York? Don't deal with her in City A. Wait until she's in New York." "I don't understand. Isn't it more convenient in City A?" Suzuki Chien Sakura said coldly, "Idiot. If something happens to Li Duobao in City A and her parents report it, the police will definitely investigate. If something happens to her in a foreign country, who will care about her?" "Understood." Suzuki Chien Sakura looked at their backs as they left. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "Bailey Yun, not only did you not care about our past relationship, you even took my son away from me and ruined my plans. I won't let you and your mistress have it easy." Li Duobao didn't know that a crisis was approaching her. After returning from New York, she rested for 2 days and then flew to England. Next, she would fly to New York. During this period of time, Bailey Yun would call her every day or send her a text message, which made her feel warm and worried. That feeling was very strange. Although she had not agreed to be in a relationship with him, the balance in her heart was already leaning towards him. Li Duobao walked slowly in her beautiful and elegant flight attendant uniform. She dragged her suitcase with one hand and held her phone with the other. There was a sweet smile on her lips. "Okay, I got it. I'm going to start work soon. See you tomorrow." Bailey Yun stood in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window in his office and looked at the skyscraper opposite. His slender fingers held his phone tightly as he laughed softly. "See you tomorrow, Duobao. I miss you very much." Li Duobao's eyes curved as she replied softly, "Think." After ending the call, her heart was still warm. Her colleague poked her with her arm and smiled ambiguously. Duobao, you have a boyfriend? Li Duobao blushed. Don't talk nonsense. We're just ordinary friends. Her colleague teased. Oh, just ordinary friends. Then why are you blushing? I'm not. I saw it clearly. Stop fooling around, it's time to board. After more than 10 hours of flight, she would arrive in New York. Thinking that he would be able to see her soon, Bailey Yun's tiredness was swept away. He was rejuvenated and his blood was boiling. He energetically held a department meeting and personally led a team to discuss the cooperation with the mainland manufacturers. Thank you for taking this flight. I wish you a pleasant journey. When the plane finally arrived in New York, Li Duobao sent the last passenger out of the cabin. After finishing the last bit of work, he and his colleagues took the bus and checked in at the hotel booked by the airline. She had just finished packing when Bailey Yun called. Duobao, have you arrived in New York? I have to meet a very important client later, so I can only come to see you at noon. Li Duobao rolled his black eyes. Sure, no problem. I was just about to catch up on my sleep. By the way, I don't think I've asked you before. What's the name of your company? Bailey Yun chuckled. Alden High-Tech Company. He wanted to say something else, but his secretary knocked on his office door. President Mr. Smith is already here. He's waiting for you in the conference room. Bailey Yun raised his hand and gestured for him to wait. Then he said to Li Duobao, Duobao, the client is here. I'll hang up first. See you at noon. Okay, see you at noon. After Li Duobao ended the call, she threw the phone on the bed and ran to the computer table happily. She quickly turned on the computer. She planned to check Bailey Yun's company address and then sneak to his company to give him a surprise. She checked the address, took a shower, and rested for an hour. Then, she took out a set of clothes from her suitcase and changed. She wore a light green windbreaker, a white lace skirt, and a pair of suede boots. She looked youthful and beautiful. She carried a white leather bag in her hand and went out in a good mood. Li Duobao had just walked out of the hotel when a taxi stopped by the road. The driver with a beard took out a photo from his pocket. He looked at Li Duobao and then looked at the woman in the photo. The corners of his lips curled up in satisfaction. It seemed that it was her. Li Duobao stood by the road and stretched out her right hand. A taxi slowly drove in front of her. The driver with a beard looked at her casually. Miss, where are you going? Li Duobao opened the back door and sat in the car. She smiled politely. Seagram Building. Thank you. No problem, the driver replied calmly. He started the car and drove further and further away from the hotel she was staying at. Although Li Duobao didn't know much about New York, she used her phone to navigate the route to Seagram Building. So, when the driver deviated from the route, she immediately reminded him, Mr. Driver, you seem to be going the wrong way. That's right, Mississippi. This road can also lead to Seagram Building, and it'll be faster. The driver looked at her through the rearview mirror. She couldn't see his expression because half of his face was covered by his beard, but there was something in his eyes that made her very uncomfortable. She thought it was her imagination and didn't take it to heart. She smiled. So that's how it is. The driver didn't say anything else and drove quietly. As time passed, Li Duobao felt more and more that something was wrong. According to the navigation on her phone, they were getting further and further away from their destination. She felt uneasy and made a prompt decision. Mr. Driver, please stop the car. I want to get out. Miss, don't worry. We'll be there soon. The driver didn't stop the car. Instead, he drove faster. Li Duobao didn't believe him anymore. Her expression changed, and she secretly dialed Bailey Yun's number. After 2 rings, the call was picked up. Duobao, what's wrong? Bailey Yun, The driver suddenly braked. Li Duobao's body suddenly fell forward, and the phone in her hand fell on the car. She quickly bent down to pick it up. The driver quickly jumped out of the driver's seat and quickly opened the back door. Just as she picked up the phone, Bailey Yun's anxious voice came through. Hello, Duobao, what happened? Bailey Yun, save me. Let go of me, let go. Before Li Duobao could finish speaking, the driver grabbed her hair with one hand and dragged her out. The other hand snatched the phone in her hand and threw it in the middle of the road. A car sped past and crushed the plane. Li Duobao struggled with punches and kicks. "What are you doing? Let go of me, let go." The driver cursed in English and suddenly raised his hand to hit the back of her head. Li Duobao's vision turned black, and she collapsed in his arms. In the meeting room, Bailey Yun's face was cold, and his thin lips were pursed. With the last bit of rationality, he apologized to Mr. Smith. "Mr. Smith, I'm very sorry. My lover is in danger now, and I have to save her. Our meeting has to be rescheduled." Smith was very reasonable and said solemnly, "If I can help, please don't hesitate." Bailey Yun shook his hand. "Thank you very much." Bailey Yun was burning with anxiety. From the analysis of the situation on the phone, Duobao must have met with an accident. This was New York, a city with a very high crime rate. He could hardly imagine what would happen to a weak woman like her if she fell into the hands of criminals. Damn it, why didn't he accompany her? If he had postponed the meeting today, none of this would have happened. Bailey Yun blamed himself and was anxious. He quickly contacted the hotel staff. The hotel said that there was no one in Li Duobao's room. The doorman saw her leave the hotel an hour and a half ago and take a taxi. Bailey Yun asked anxiously, "What's the license plate number of the taxi?" "I'm sorry, our staff didn't pay attention." Now, they could only check the taxi company's vehicle records to locate which taxi Li Duobao was in. However, this could only be done by the police. When Bailey Yun was young and frivolous, he had dealings with the New York underworld. He had also been to the police station many times and had even made friends with a few police detectives. Now, these connections could be put to good use. He contacted his former underworld friends and asked them to help find Li Duobao's whereabouts. On the other hand, he asked the New York Police Department to come forward and find out that there were more than 10 taxis that had picked up passengers outside the hotel. After the police investigated these cars, they finally locked on to one of the taxis. Unexpectedly, during the investigation, the driver of the taxi claimed that his car had been robbed. The person who robbed his car was a man with a full beard and sunglasses. The investigation was a race against time. Every second delayed meant that Li Duobao would be in more danger. It was the first time Bailey Yun was so frightened. He tried his best to control his emotions. While waiting for the results of the police investigation, he looked around for ways to inquire about Li Duobao. Li Duobao's head was dizzy. In a trance, she felt someone pushing her body hard. A woman's voice shouted in her ear in English, "Hey, wake up!" She slowly opened her eyes and saw the face of a beautiful foreign woman. The woman retracted her hand, straightened her body, and hugged her shoulders with both hands. "She's awake. Take her to put on makeup." Li Duobao's mind was in a mess. Before she could figure out the situation, a black man in a black vest and ripped jeans stood out from behind the woman. He grabbed Li Duobao's arm and dragged her up from the ground. "Hey, what do you want? Let me go." Li Duobao struggled and refused to follow the black man. In these few seconds, she quickly looked around and found that she was in a dark room similar to a basement. She must have been kidnapped by the taxi driver and brought here. The foreign woman looked at her coldly. "You've been sold to me. Gigai, listen to me. Otherwise, you'll suffer." Li Duobao's head exploded with a bang. He had been sold? Was it the driver? She tried to calm herself down. "Who sold me to you? How much? I want to redeem myself." Welfare, Song Shu 566. Chapter 391. The foreign woman laughed out loud. "Redeem yourself? That's the funniest joke I've heard this year. Miss, you'll soon understand where I am." Li Duobao bit her lips, her eyes filled with determination. "In this world, there's no price that can't be negotiated. Tell me, how much money do you want for you to let me go?" The foreign woman crossed her arms and sneered, "When I bought you, I spent 100,000 USD. Isn't it just 100,000 USD? I'll give it to you." Li Duobao said generously, but her heart was beating like a drum. 100,000 USD? How could she have that much money? But in order to stabilize the other party, she had no choice but to lie. I'll contact a friend right now and ask him to raise the money. The woman snorted. When I bought you, I spent 100,000. Now that I'm selling you, of course it'll be more than that. Li Duobao raised her chin. Then how much do you want? The woman walked closer to her, her eyes filled with greed. Li Duobao subconsciously retreated, but she was held tightly by the thug and had no room to dodge. She could only watch as the woman's right hand landed on her face. The woman caressed Li Duobao's smooth cheeks with a strange smile on her face. A beautiful Asian girl like you is very popular with those rich people. You can be auctioned off for at least $1 million USD. Li Duobao was shocked. Auction? She finally understood what this woman was doing. This must be an underground trading place, and she would be auctioned off as a commodity. This thought flashed through her mind, and she made a prompt decision. All right, $1 million it is. Yo, little girl, you're quite arrogant. Do you really have that much money? The woman's beautiful eyes were filled with suspicion as she sized her up. I don't, but my friend does. Li Duobao puffed out her chest and forced herself to be calm as she met her sharp gaze. My friend is the CEO of a high-tech company. He will definitely save me. The woman's eyes moved slightly as she stared at her thoughtfully, as if she was considering whether what she said was true or not. The air froze, and the surroundings were silent. Li Duobao nervously clenched her fists, waiting for the woman's decision. Suddenly, a melodious ringtone sounded, and the woman put the phone close to her ear. What's the matter? Sister Lisa, the client is making a ruckus. He wants to see the goods as soon as possible. The woman's eyes flashed and her red lips parted. All right, I understand. I'll be right there. She ended the call and looked at Li Duobao. She shrugged her shoulders and said, I'm sorry, but I can't make this deal with you. Tonight, all my clients are here for you. I can't ruin my own reputation. Most importantly, she had a hunch that the Chinese girl in front of her would be auctioned off for a very good price. After saying that, the woman waved her hand, and the black thug twisted Li Duobao's arm and walked out of the basement. Li Duobao did not give up. He turned around and shouted, Think about it again. I can still increase the price. The woman sneered and said no more. Li Duobao's heart was in a mess. She didn't know what to do. Bailey Yun should have found out that she was kidnapped. Would he come to save her? He would definitely come to save her, but the problem was, would he be able to find this place? Li Duobao was a little desperate. She was now being dragged by the thugs into an underground base. They turned several corners in the underground passage. When they stopped, they were already standing in front of a brightly lit room. What are you waiting for? Come in quickly. An old woman with heavy makeup pulled Li Duobao from the hands of the thugs and dragged her into the room. The black thug was like a door god, guarding the door with his hands behind his back. Yo, today's finale is the Dongfang girl. Before Li Duobao had time to look at the situation in front of her, 4 or 5 old women had already surrounded her. As if they were looking at goods, they looked at her up and down with a picky gaze. One touched her chin, the other touched her chest and sighed, Dongfang girl, rare goods. Her face is not bad, but it's a pity that her chest is not big. An old woman opened her mouth and smiled wretchedly. What's there to be afraid of with a small chest? Some guests with unique tastes like it. Alright, stop talking nonsense. Hurry up and help her dress up. It's going to be chaotic in front. The old women pulled Li Duobao into the bathtub. They took off her clothes in a flurry. Go away, don't touch me. Li Duobao hugged her chest in panic. Her legs kicked and struggled, splashing water everywhere. The women's clothes were all wet. Damn it, this girl is like a fighting dog. She's so fierce. With her like this, we can't give her a bath. The old woman who looked like the leader cursed and casually called out a person's name. Carolyn, go get that thing and give her an injection. An old woman wearing a sexy red dress with sagging breasts and a wrinkled neck responded and quickly walked to the dressing table. She opened a box and took out a syringe from it. She approached Li Duobao with a strange smile on her shriveled face. Little girl, after you inject this thing, you have no choice but to be obedient. What is that? Go away, Li Duobao opened her eyes wide in panic and struggled with all her strength. "Sisters, hold her down for me." At Caroline's command, everyone rushed forward and pressed Li Duobao tightly into the bathtub. "No, I beg of you, let me go." Li Duobao's 4 limbs were held down, and she had no room to resist. Tears of panic gushed out of her eyes as she begged for mercy helplessly. However, no one helped her. They all looked at her coldly as she suffered. Caroline pierced the syringe into her blood vessels, and the transparent liquid slowly injected into her body. Li Duobao leaned against the edge of the bathtub in despair. She didn't know what they injected into her body, but she knew that it definitely wasn't something good. She felt her hearing and vision gradually become blurry, as if she was isolated from the world. Her body felt as if there were 10,000 little worms crawling on it. It was numb and disgusting. Her clothes were stripped off, and her skin came into contact with the cold air. It was so cold that she shivered. Pairs of hands rubbed her body forcefully or used a soft brush to wash her. Her limbs were sore and weak, and she couldn't stop them. She could only passively accept it. After an unknown period of time, a green sea appeared in front of her. She felt as if she was swimming in the clouds, and she felt as light as a feather. The scene changed, and it became a beautiful field under the setting sun. She and Bailey Yun strolled hand in hand. He smiled gently and charmingly. He kissed her lips and whispered affectionately, "Duobao, I love you." Li Duobao had already been dragged to the dressing room by the group of people. She leaned against the back of the chair and looked at the ceiling in a daze, giggling foolishly. Just as she was immersed in the illusion brought about by the hallucinogenic drugs, the old women finished putting on her makeup and put on a sexy translucent underwear. They also smeared a layer of transparent liquid on her body. Under the illumination of the light, her whole body glowed brightly like a pearl. She was so beautiful that it was suffocating. "All right, quickly bring her up to the stage." Unknowingly, Lisa appeared at the entrance of the dressing room. She crossed her arms and looked at Li Duobao indifferently. When Li Duobao was brought to the auction stage, she was still stumbling and couldn't even walk steadily. The dazzling light suddenly enveloped her body, but she didn't react at all. She stared blankly at the group of sanctimonious rich people below the stage. This was a brightly lit hall with luxurious decorations. The stage was filled with men in suits and leather shoes. Most of them were young people, and there were a few middle-aged and old men. Li Duobao's face was still intoxicated by the hallucinogen. That beautiful face had a dazed and silly expression, which simply had a fatal charm. The noisy stage suddenly quieted down. The host held the microphone in his hand and excitedly introduced, "Gentlemen, the beautiful miss that you see now is our most dazzling pearl tonight. Look at her delicate skin, perky breasts and buttocks, as well as that slender waist and slender legs. It will definitely make you want to die." The host used vulgar words to describe Li Duobao's body, arousing the enthusiasm of the audience below the stage. He even reached out his hand to touch her face in disgust. "This skin is as smooth and tender as a peeled egg. It's really enchanting. Most importantly, she's still an uncultivated virgin. Everyone, let's not wait any longer. Let's start the bidding. The starting price is $500,000. The audience below the stage used greedy and obscene gazes to linger on Li Duobao's body. They estimated her value in their hearts. A fat middle-aged man had already raised the sign in his hand and shouted, "1 million. Great, this gentleman has bid 1 million. Is there a higher bid? 1,100,000. 1,200,000. The audience began to fiercely bid. The noisy voices continued to wash Li Duobao's eardrums. She gradually pulled herself out of the hallucinatory world. The voices in her ears became clearer and clearer. The scene in front of her fell into her eyes. Only then did she realize that she was standing naked under the light. She met countless wretched gazes. She subconsciously hugged her chest with both hands. Her body slowly trembled. Her heart was also trembling. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run away. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, she had no choice but to stand there in despair. There was only a voice in her heart telling her, Li Duobao, be strong. Don't cry. Don't cry in front of these pigs and dogs. The voices of bidding rose and fell. Perhaps it was the psychological suggestion that worked. She slowly calmed down and expressionlessly stared at the group of people below the stage. In her clear eyes, there was something called strength. Perhaps, in her subconscious, she believed that Bailey Yun would definitely come to save her. Welfare Hongcha 866. Chapter 392. The host shouted at the top of his lungs, 2 million going once, 2 million going twice. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? 5 million. The closed door was suddenly pushed open, and a tall figure appeared at the door. The venue fell silent. $5 million was a sky-high price to buy a woman. Everyone turned their heads and looked at the man who had suddenly barged in. He was handsome, and his expression was cold. His entire body was emitting a domineering aura that made people tremble. He walked forward step by step, and with every step he took, Li Duobao's heart trembled. It was Bailey Yun. He really came. The moment she saw him, her tears almost rolled down her cheeks. She bit her lips tightly and tried to control the sobs that came from the depths of her throat. The host shouted excitedly, 5 million! This gentleman has bid 5 million. Is there anyone who wants to bid higher than him? She's a rare Oriental beauty. The venue was still silent. Other than Bailey Yun's heavy footsteps, no other sound could be heard. The host tried to push the price higher and shouted, 5 million going once, 5 million going twice. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? Bailey Yun walked up the stage step by step. Only then did the host and the audience in the front row see his expression clearly. He was like a ghost that had crawled out of hell. His eyes were gloomy and terrifying, and his entire body suddenly emitted a violent aura. The smile on the host's face instantly froze. Sir, please wait below the stage. The auction is not over yet. Bai Liyun's eyes were dyed with a hint of scarlet. As if he didn't hear the host's reminder, he directly walked past him and walked in front of Li Duobao, who was covering his chest with both hands. He quickly took off his suit jacket and gently draped it over her shoulders. Then, he tightened the jacket and blocked the vulgar gazes of the group of people. His jacket could only cover about 2 inches below her legs, but it was much better than her lace underwear. He stared at her deeply. Without saying a word, he held her hand tightly and shielded her behind him. Then, his fierce gaze locked onto the host. His voice was hoarse, but it carried a coldness that brooked no refusal. Call your boss here. His actions confused everyone. The host smiled awkwardly. Sir, what do you mean by this? Bailey Yun's eyes were filled with murderous intent, like a ferocious lion glaring at its prey. Your boss, tell him to come see me. The owner of this underground auction was the woman Li Duobao saw when he first woke up, Lisa. Through the surveillance camera, Lisa had already understood the situation in front of her. She slowly tidied up her hair and informed the bodyguard to bring Bailey Yun over. The bodyguard whispered a few words into the host's ear and then walked over to Bailey Yun. Sir, our boss would like to see you. Bailey Yun glanced at him expressionlessly. He held Li Duobao's hand and followed him backstage. There was an uproar below the stage. The host hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Everyone, today's auction has come to an end. Thank you for coming. Bailey Yun protected Li Duobao and followed the bodyguard to Lisa's office. Lisa was wearing a long black dress and 7 centimeters high heels. Her beautiful blonde hair was draped over her shoulders. She held a cigar between her slender fingers and leaned lazily on the desk. Her indifferent gaze fell on Bailey Yun. Sir, why are you looking for me? Bailey Yun stared at her coldly. You have guts. How dare you auction my woman? Li Duobao stood behind him with her head lowered. Her hand was still in his hand. When she heard him say, my woman, an indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. Lisa's pupils suddenly shrank. She chuckled and said, since she's come to this auction house, she's my goods. You've already bid for this miss for 5 million. As long as you pay the price, you can take her away. Bailey Yun pursed his lips and said indifferently, I can give you 5 million. I want to know who kidnapped my woman. Lisa shrugged. I can't tell you. You know the rules of our business. Bailey Yun sneered. If you don't want to say, then go to the police station and discuss the so-called rules with the police. Lisa's expression changed slightly. She smiled faintly and said, Our auction house does legal business. Even if you call the police, I don't care. Bailey Yun's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. Legal? If the police witnessed this auction with their own eyes, can your business be considered legal? He raised his left hand. There was a watch on his wrist. He said to the watch, Detective Arnold, you can come in now. Actually, it wasn't a watch, but a one-way intercom. It could transmit all the sounds from this side to the other side. Lisa was furious. She took out a gun from the desk drawer and aimed it at Bailey Yun's chest. Bailey Yun calmly protected Li Duobao behind him and sneered. If I were you, I wouldn't be so stupid as to add another crime to my name. Shut up. I'm going to kill you. Before Lisa could pull the trigger, the office door was kicked open. A group of armed police surrounded them. Police, don't move. Put down your weapons. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, Lisa had no choice but to throw away the gun in her hand. When she was taken away by the police, she glared at Bailey Yun angrily. Bailey Yun didn't even look at her. All his attention was on Li Duobao, who was hiding behind him. He pulled her out from behind and held her tightly in his arms. He stroked her hair with his warm hands and said softly, Duobao, I'm sorry to have made you suffer. Only then did Li Duobao's highly taut nerves completely relax. She was like a frightened little animal, cowering in his arms in fear. Her tears fell uncontrollably, and a suppressed sob came from her throat. Duobao, it's okay. I'm here. Bailey Yun's heart ached. He frowned and hugged her tightly in his arms. He wished he could rub her into his body so that they wouldn't have to worry about being separated. Li Duobao cried for a while, and the fear in her heart gradually dissipated. However, she couldn't bear to leave his warm embrace. Still leaning on his chest, she muttered, How did you find me? I used to know some underworld friends. They said that the owner of the underground auction house said that a Chinese girl was being auctioned tonight. I guessed it was you, so I came to try my luck. Bailey Yun rubbed her hair. There was a trace of uneasiness in his low voice. Did they hurt you? Li Duobao shook her head. She suddenly thought of something and said in fear, They injected me with something. I became muddle-headed. Could it be drugs? Bailey Yun's body stiffened. His Adam's apple bobbed twice. His low voice suppressed his anger. Duobao, don't be afraid. Let's find that syringe first and take it to the police station for testing. If they really injected her with drugs, he would never let them go. The police found a lot of prohibited items in the underground auction house. There were also a few Shao girls who had been abducted from Africa. With this solid evidence, the leaders of the auction house would definitely not be able to escape the punishment of the law. Li Duobao and Bailey Yun also had to go to the police station to make a statement. She was still wearing Bailey Yun's jacket. Inside was the translucent underwear. When she sat down, her legs would definitely be exposed. She stood awkwardly at the door of the police car, too embarrassed to sit down. Suddenly, her waist tightened. She subconsciously lowered her head. Bailey Yun's arm was around her waist. He tied a thin blanket around her waist. The blanket was very long, enough to cover her legs. Are you still cold? He asked softly. Li Duobao's long eyelashes trembled. She was touched by his thoughtfulness. He deliberately blurred the focus so that she wouldn't be embarrassed. She sniffed, shook her head, and got into the police car. The police car quickly arrived at the police station. Bailey Yun wasn't in a hurry to get out of the car. Instead, he whispered something to the police officer who was with him. The police officer nodded and called for the driver. The two of them left first. Li Duobao reached out to open the car door. Bailey Yun stopped her. Don't be anxious. Wait for a while. She didn't understand and looked at him blankly. He smiled and explained, I asked my assistant to go to the hotel to bring your luggage over. He'll be here soon. We'll go upstairs after you change. Li Duobao blushed and said, Oh, Bailey Yun ruffled her hair. Sit in the car. I'll go down and wait for Kelly. After waiting for 2 or 3 minutes, a car drove into the underground parking lot. Kelly got out of the car with a suitcase and walked quickly to Bailey Yun. President, this is Miss Lee's luggage. Bailey Yun nodded and said calmly, You've worked hard. You can go back and rest first. It was nighttime and there was no one in the underground parking lot. Bailey Yun's back was facing the police car to avoid arousing suspicion. Lee Duobao got into the back of the car and quickly changed her clothes. After getting out of the car, she walked to him and said with a red face, I'm done. Let's go upstairs. Lee Yun made an "n" sound and very naturally grabbed her left hand, holding it tightly in his hand. She blushed even more and secretly glanced at him. His face was calm, as if he didn't have any other thoughts. She was embarrassed to pull her hand back. The syringe was sent for testing. Bailey Yun accompanied Lee Duobao to take a statement. Then he brought her back to his apartment. This was a very beautiful villa. He lived alone. The hourly workers would come to clean every day, so the room was very clean and tidy. Bailey Yun brought Lee Duobao to the guest room and gave her a clean towel and a man's bathrobe. I don't have women's clothes here. Wear my bathrobe first. Tomorrow, we'll go shopping and buy some women's products. Lee Duobao quickly said, No need. I'll go back to the hotel tomorrow. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 393. Bailey Yun's face darkened and his gaze turned fierce. It's too dangerous for you to stay in the hotel alone. I'm worried. Stay at my place when you come to New York in the future. It was the first time Lee Duobao had seen such a scary expression on his face. She pouted guiltily. What happened today was just an accident. My colleagues are all staying at that hotel. I'll be careful in the future. There's no room for discussion. From today onwards, you'll stay at my place. Bai Liyun took a step forward and lowered his head to look at her. The two of them were very close to each other, his face almost touching hers. His tall and straight body released a domineering aura that could not be denied, tightly enveloping her. Lee Duobao was anxious. She raised her chin and looked at him. Bailey Yun, can't you be more reasonable? My colleagues are all staying there and I'm the only one who's special. What do you want others to think? Bailey Yun was so angry that he gritted his teeth and roared at her, I'm not reasonable? Do you know that I'm going crazy because you're missing? Do you know how guilty I feel? I want to beat myself up. I wish I was the one who was kidnapped. Lee Duobao's body trembled. She looked at him in disbelief and her eyes quickly reddened. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I really didn't know. I wanted to give you a surprise. I'm sorry. She bit her lips and her beautiful big eyes were sparkling with tears. She looked so pitiful that she looked like an obedient little white rabbit. His heart started to ache. He suddenly reached out and pulled her into his arms. He hugged her tightly and said in a low voice, Girl, don't make me worry again in the future. She didn't struggle and Gigai let him hug her. She pressed her head against his broad chest and said softly, Okay, I won't anymore. He hugged her arm tighter and stroked her hair gently. Listen to me and stay here with me. I won't be worried only if I can watch over you at all times. She was in a difficult position and didn't know how to respond. He rubbed his smooth chin against her silky hair and said in a magnetic voice, If you feel troubled, I'll talk to your leader. He won't make things difficult for you. She muttered, How are you going to communicate with my boss? Bai Liyun's mood improved a little. The corner of his lips curled up as he chuckled. I'll tell him directly that you're my fiancé. In order to save money for the company, you'll stay with me temporarily. She hurriedly pushed him away and said seriously, No, I'm not your fiancé. Don't talk nonsense. He shrugged nonchalantly. Sooner or later. Her face flushed red. We haven't started dating yet. If you spout nonsense, I'll ignore you from now on. Bailey Yun poked her puffy cheeks and raised his eyebrows mischievously. All right, I was just teasing you. Silly girl, you actually took it seriously. You're the stupid one. Lee Duobao slapped his hand away with a fierce face. All right, don't be angry. Hurry up and take a shower. After that, we'll go downstairs to eat. Although he really wanted to tease the silly lass had been frightened for an entire day and should also relax. Okay. Li Duobao picked up the towel and bathrobe that he had placed on the sofa. She smiled shyly and walked into the bathroom. Bailey Yun put his hands in his trouser pockets. When he heard the sound of water splashing in the bathroom, he turned and went downstairs. The all-in-one kitchen was decorated with modern black marble and black tempered glass. It was spotless. Bailey Yun didn't know how to cook and had never cooked before. The kitchen was simply a decoration to him. Fortunately, he had hired a very good hourly worker. She would buy food every day and fill his fridge to the brim in case he needed it. He opened the fridge and looked through it. Most of the food inside was frozen food. He just needed to put it in the pot and cook it. He squatted in front of the fridge and frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, he finally decided to cook frozen dumplings. He washed the pot, filled it with water, covered the pot, turned on the gas stove, and waited for the water to boil. That's what the internet said. It should be right. Bailey Yun used his mobile phone to search for how to cook frozen dumplings and then followed the steps, step by step. The water in the pot bubbled and bubbled. Steam rose from the pores and filled the air. Bailey Yun opened the package of frozen dumplings and held a frozen dumpling in his hand. He stood about half a meter away from the pot and then threw the dumpling into the boiling pot like he was throwing a baseball. Plop. The dumpling hit the pot and the water splashed out. A drop splashed on the back of his hand and burned him. Plop, plop. Finally, he threw the whole package of dumplings into the boiling pot. The back of his hand had been burned red. He didn't care about the burn on his hand and quickly covered the pot. Bailey Yun stared at the pot seriously and waited for the water to boil. The internet said that after the dumplings were put into the pot, cold water had to be added twice when the water boiled. A few minutes later, the water finally boiled. He scooped a small bowl of cold water and poured it into the pot to continue cooking. When he scooped the cooked dumplings into a bowl, Li Duobao happened to come down from upstairs. Her hair was still a little wet and was draped over her shoulders. She had changed into her own clothes, a checkered skirt and a small white cardigan. She looked youthful and energetic. Bailey Yun brought the dumplings to the dining room and greeted her with a smile. The dumplings just came out of the pot. Come and eat them while they're hot. Li Duobao jogged over. Okay, I love dumplings the most. Eat more if you like them. Here's a pair of chopsticks. Try them and see if they taste good. Bailey Yun stuffed the chopsticks into her hands, held her shoulders, and pressed her into the chair. Li Duobao held the chopsticks but didn't eat. She glanced at the dining table and asked curiously, "Why is there only one bowl? Aren't you going to eat?" Bailey Yun touched his nose embarrassedly. "There's only one bag of frozen dumplings. The first. I'll cook the instant noodles later." "What's wrong with the back of your hand?" Li Duobao saw that the back of his hand was red. He shrugged nonchalantly. "It's nothing. I accidentally scalded myself. Why don't you treat it? If there are blisters, it'll get worse." Li Duobao quickly put down her chopsticks and grabbed his wrist. Her delicate brows furrowed. "It's so red. Wash it with cold water first." She grabbed his wrist and dragged him to the sink. She turned on the tap and washed the back of his hand with cold water. She explained carefully, "After a burn, you have to wash the wound with cold water first. Then, soak the wound in cold water for 10 minutes to half an hour. Then, apply burn ointment. Do you have any burn ointment in your house?" Bailey Yun looked at her serious expression and was in a good mood. He couldn't feel the burning on the back of his hand and turned a deaf ear to her question. Li Duobao didn't get an answer for a long time. She looked up and saw him in a daze. She said angrily, "Hey, what are you thinking about? Let me ask you, do you have any burn ointment at home?" A smile appeared in Bai Liyun's eyes as he shook his head. Li Duobao thought for a moment and said, "It's okay. If you don't have any ointment, you can use honey, ginger juice, or toothpaste instead. Apply it to the wound and it can quickly suppress the redness and swelling. It can also stop the pain. Soak your hand in cold water and don't move. I'll get the toothpaste." Bai Liyun's eyes curved into crescents. "All right. The little girl ran upstairs like a gust of wind to find the toothpaste. Bailey Yun's smile widened. He lowered his eyes and looked at his fingers soaked in cold water. His heart was full. Okay, the toothpaste is here. Li Duobao rushed back to his side like a gust of wind. She first disinfected the back of his hand with alcohol and then carefully applied the toothpaste to the wound. Bailey Yun looked at the snow-white back of his hand and smiled. I didn't expect you to know these things. Li Duobao grinned. When I was young, I often got scalded while cooking. That's what my mother taught me. There's a saying that a long illness makes a good doctor. It's referring to me. The smile on Bailey Yun's face gradually froze. Every time she mentioned her past life, he felt his heart ache. However, she acted as if nothing had happened and never took it to heart. She was even proud that the suffering of the past had made her who she was now. Every time he learned more about her, he liked her more. He thought that if he hadn't met her on the plane when he had left that desperate one-sided love, how lonely would his life have been? He smiled and gently patted her head. He said softly, "Let's eat. The dumplings are sticky." Li Duobao blinked and quickly rolled up the sleeves of her cardigan. "Sit down first. I'll get you something to eat." "No need. I'm not hungry yet. You eat first." Bailey Yun tried to stop her, but she put her hands on his back and pushed him to the dining table. She joked, "The kitchen is my territory now. Don't come in and disturb me. Gigai, sit down. I'll be back soon." Bailey Yun watched her open the fridge and hesitated for a few seconds. Then she took out a few eggs, a few tomatoes, and a packet of instant noodles from the cabinet. She was wearing an apron and seemed to be in a good mood. She wandered around the kitchen table for a few minutes and soon came back with a bowl of fragrant tomato and egg noodles. She placed the noodles in front of him and handed him a pair of chopsticks. She smiled with narrowed eyes. "Be careful. It's hot." Bailey Yun's slanted eyes curved and he pulled out a chair for her. "Sit down. The dumplings are cold." "It's okay. It's easier to eat when it's cold." Li Duobao picked up a chubby dumpling and put it in his bowl. Her eyes were full of smiles. "These are the dumplings you worked so hard to cook. How can you not try it?" Bailey Yun picked up a chopstick of noodles and put it into his mouth. His eyes immediately turned red. "It's delicious. Duobao, your cooking skills are amazing." Li Duobao was embarrassed by his praise. She took a bite of the dumpling and praised him back. "The dumplings are delicious too." He smiled sheepishly. "It's a pity that I didn't make them myself. They were frozen dumplings. I was only responsible for cooking them, but in the end, I burned my hand." Awesome novel, Song Shu 566. Chapter 394. Li Duobao blinked her big watery eyes and grinned. "It's not embarrassing to not know how to cook. There are many things that you know how to do that I don't know either." Bailey Yun immediately beamed with joy. "So, you don't mind?" "Of course I don't mind." Li Duobao blinked her eyes in confusion. She really didn't know what to mind about this kind of thing. Of course, she didn't understand Bai Li Yun's thoughts. He looked confident and proud, but in reality he still felt inferior in his heart. He felt guilty for his past. Facing such an innocent Li Duobao, he wanted to become the perfect man in her heart. After the meal, Bailey Yun took the initiative to take on the responsibility of washing the dishes. Li Duobao pushed him to the side and coaxed him like a child. "Your hand is injured, so you should rest. I'm used to doing these chores. It'll be done soon." Bai Li Yun leaned against the wall and watched her busying herself in the kitchen. She skillfully did the housework with a peaceful smile on her face. Her graceful figure appeared even more enchanting under the soft light. It was a wonderful feeling and also very warm. It was as if the two of them had lived together for many years and didn't need to do anything. As long as he quietly watched her, he would be satisfied. Li Duobao cut some fruits and placed them in a beautiful glass plate. She smiled and brought them in front of him. "The fruits are here after the meal." Bailey Yun pulled her to his side and sat down. "Let's watch a comedy. It'll help you sleep if you relax before going to bed." "Sure." The two of them nestled on the soft sofa, watching a comedy while eating fruits. Li Duobao was convulsing with laughter, and Bai Liyun wasn't any better. He held his stomach and collapsed on her lap, laughing like a big fox and a little white rabbit. He was laughing happily on the sofa, and his fur was all over the sofa. After watching the movie, Bai Liyun laid on Li Duobao's lap and lazily stretched his waist. "It's getting late, let's rest early." Li Duobao puffed up her cheeks and stared at him without blinking. He wantonly rubbed against her legs twice, and that unbelievably beautiful face still had a satisfied expression. "Don't tell me we're just going to rest like this? How much longer are you going to take advantage of me? I've been using my eyes to whip you for a long time." Li Duobao slapped his head in dissatisfaction. Bai Liyun narrowed his peach blossom eyes and threw her a charming smile. His voice was extremely charming. "It's too comfortable. I can't bear to get up. If you think you're at a disadvantage, you can lean on my legs." He patted his thigh with his slender fingers and stretched out his arms. "Come, I'll give you my warm embrace too." She pouted in disdain. "No way, I'm the one who's at a disadvantage, okay? Get up, I'm going to bed." She pushed him forcefully, and he slowly climbed up from her legs with a regretful look on his face. The bed in the guest room was very comfortable, and it was many times more comfortable than the bed in the hotel. Moreover, Li Duobao had been frightened and was mentally exhausted. Once she laid on the bed, she quickly fell asleep. Bai Liyun was worried that she wouldn't be able to sleep because of the shock, so he warmed up a glass of milk in the kitchen and brought it upstairs. He sneaked it into her room, but when he walked to the head of the bed, he saw that she had curled up into a ball and was sleeping soundly. He raised his eyebrows in amusement and bent down to stroke her hair gently. The next morning, Li Duobao climbed out of bed in a daze. The room was unfamiliar. She rubbed her cheeks hard, and her brain gradually woke up. "Ah, this is Bai Liyun's house." She instantly regained her energy. She glanced at the clock by the bed. It was already 8:30. She knew something was wrong and hurriedly jumped out of bed. She didn't even have time to change her clothes as she ran downstairs in her slippers. Bai Liyun was sitting on the sofa reading the newspaper. When he heard the frantic footsteps, he looked up and saw Li Duobao running downstairs in a cute white rabbit nightgown. Her long hair was messy, and her little face was filled with anxiety. Bai Liyun's heart tightened, and he hurriedly stood up. "Duobao, what happened?" Li Duobao's footsteps suddenly froze, and she stood there in a daze for a few seconds. She touched her hair awkwardly. You're not going to the office?" Bai Liyun walked closer to her. "I'm staying at home to accompany you today. You still haven't told me why you ran down in a panic." Li Duobao chuckled. "I accidentally overslept." "I thought you were going to the office?" She did not continue speaking. Her fair cheeks had already been dyed with a faint layer of pink, and even her small earlobes were flushed red. Bai Liyun was slightly startled, then suddenly chuckled. He approached her and ruffled her hair, his eyes filled with a bright light. "You ran so fast just to send me to the company?" She replied shyly. She thought he was going to the office, and they could only meet again at night, so she didn't want to miss this morning's farewell. Bai Liyun beamed. Looking at her lowered eyes and the way her eyelashes trembled shyly, he felt sweet in his heart. He bent down and kissed her forehead gently. "Silly girl, I'm liking you more and more. What should I do?" His slightly cold lips were imprinted on her forehead, and she couldn't help but tremble slightly. She bit her lips shyly, and her heart pounded. She didn't dare to raise her head to look at him. His deep and magnetic laughter seemed to come from his chest, and it was so pleasant that it was intoxicating. He pulled her into his embrace, and his warm palm rested on her waist. He whispered, "Duobao, you're mine?" She didn't say anything, but there was a hint of a smile in her clear eyes. The two of them hugged each other quietly. The morning sun shone through the window onto the clean floor, and it was as beautiful as a painting. Gulp gulp. A strange sound broke the warm atmosphere. Bai Liyun chuckled. "Hungry? Go wash up. I've already made breakfast." Li Duobao's cheeks were red as she withdrew from his embrace. Like a little rabbit, she quickly ran upstairs. She ran all the way to the bathroom and saw herself in the mirror. Her face was like a peach blossom, and her hair was like withered grass. She was so embarrassed that she was about to cry. She actually ran downstairs without washing up or changing her clothes, letting him see her worst side. However, he didn't mind at all, and even kissed her forehead. She felt like her soul was about to fly away. When she tidied herself up, changed her clothes, and went downstairs again, Bailey Yun had already placed 2 sets of breakfast on the dining table. Each of them had a glass of milk, and there was also a black unknown object. "What's this?" Li Duobao poked the plate with a fork. It was dark inside the plate, and she couldn't tell what it was. Bailey Yun coughed. "The legendary fried egg." Li Duobao sighed. "The legendary dark cuisine." Without hesitation, she picked up the fork and put a piece into her mouth. Just as she was about to put it in her mouth, Bailey Yun quickly grabbed her wrist and smiled awkwardly. "It's better not to eat it. I'll order takeout." She blinked. "No, other than my dad, you're the first man to cook for me." She suddenly thought of something and held his hand. "Let me see. Did you burn yourself again?" "No, I was smart enough not to throw a ball this time." Bailey Yun raised his eyebrows proudly. "Actually, I've tried it before. It tastes pretty good, but the color is a little ugly. Now that you mention it, I want to try it even more." Li Duobao's expression didn't change. She put the fork into her mouth and chewed carefully. Bailey Yun looked at her anxiously and expectantly. "How is it?" "It tastes pretty good." She smiled and praised him. Then, she chewed the eggshell inside the fried egg and swallowed it quietly. Bailey Yun's eyes immediately lit up. He was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. He combed the hair in front of his forehead and said, "I told you. I have the talent to be a chef." "Oh, not bad. You can do it, Chef Bailey. I have high hopes for you." Li Duobao winked mischievously and gave him a thumbs up. The two of them laughed and finished breakfast. Li Duobao pushed him to the side with the reason that he couldn't touch water because of the burn on his hand. She washed the dishes and cleaned the kitchen herself. When she walked into the kitchen, she realized that it could be described as a battlefield. Egg white was flowing on the table, a pool of egg yolk was lying on the ground, and broken eggshells were everywhere. It took talent to be able to make a kitchen like this. When Li Duobao was cleaning up, she found that there were several black unknown objects in the trash can. The objects were mixed with a lot of fried eggshells. Her eyes turned slightly and she quickly understood. Bailey Yun must have practiced many times before he could bring out the 2 finished products. Through the black fried eggs that had been thrown away, she seemed to see him standing in the kitchen, scratching his ears and cheeks in a panic as he fought with the eggs. She couldn't help but laugh out loud. Bailey Yun stood behind her and looked at her giggling to the trash can. He touched his nose embarrassedly. "You've realized that I've actually failed many times?" Li Duobao turned to look at him. Her head was slightly tilted and she had a quiet smile on her face. "Why do you do things that you're not good at?" Bailey Yun stared at her with a serious expression and said slowly, "You're hungry." He had exposed the things that he wasn't good at in front of her time and time again. The reason was very simple. It was because he cared about her. Although the food he made didn't taste good and looked ugly, it was because he was considerate of her. Li Duobao bit her lip. This was the most touching words of love she had ever heard. It touched her heart even more than, "I love you." Her eyes flickered quickly and she asked, "Are you so considerate to all women?" He hesitated for a moment and said, "Before you, there was only one." He walked closer to her. "I don't want to hide it from you. I used to love Xiaodong." She looked at him with her clear eyes and asked softly, "Do you still love her?" He smiled slowly. "She taught me what love is and how to love someone. To me, she's special. But the person I love now is you. Can you understand?" He stared into her eyes so seriously. His deep eyes were surging with emotions. There was uneasiness, apprehension, and anticipation. He understood that people were selfish when it came to relationships. He hoped that he was the only one in his lover's heart. He didn't know if she would accept him like this. Hongcha 866, that you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.